Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're at, ladies and gents. I am Kura Isagami, and thanks for tuning in for a very, very special episode of the Medarot News Network here, as I finally tackle a number of questions that has been asked by the Western Medarot community, even as a whole, honestly, for many, many years now. For what is it, what does it do, how long has it been around, where did it go is one of the most important questions. And I gotta say, I've been I've been chomping at the bit, wanting to try to put this together. I've kept my hand incredibly close to my chest, trying to not tease or hint anything too heavily. Aside from the fact of what that it's going on and the date and the time. I do also want to take a minute before we do get started officially and let you guys know I do also want to apologize briefly. Primarily for the fact that I understand I have not been streaming the last several weeks. Mostly just a lot of stuff here and there that's been going on, and mostly preparing for this as well. But all the same, I am very excited for this here. But before I do go any further, I do also want to say, and just as a preamble leading up to this, that I am most certainly not alone in wanting to put this together. I may have pulled out all the stops in wanting to collect all my information in finding sources wherever I can and everywhere I can. But I am joined by several wonderful guests of mine that will be here with me tonight as a very special opportunity as we present this question of what is Medarots to the world outside of Japan, especially to the followers and friends of the series. So let me go ahead and set up everything here for that. Mute. Right, let me bring my guest in here officially. Ladies and gents, thank you so much for your patience stopping in with me. Gold, Helmchan, Sane, Agent Toad, and Vector, how are you all doing, my friends?
Wow, it's us. We're on
Hey.
the screen, you guys.
No.
Lovely to be here. Hope you're all doing well yourself.
I am so excited to have you guys with me, and thank you so much for the opportunity to stop in on your busy times to come and hang out with me for a while. I know it's a little crazy with the time zones and everything now and then, but I'm so glad we were able to coordinate this, and I'm honored beyond words that I could have you all with me here today. Gold, Sane, and Vector, I know we have collabed in the past, so it's always nice to have you all with me again, but we do have two new faces with us today, ladies and gentlemen. Helm-chan, tell us just a little bit about yourself. We'll start with you first.
Certainly, yes. So I'm Chan, the perfectly normal robot maid. I'm a VTuber that streams on Twitch, usually 3 times a week, and I like to do RPGs, platformers, and of course, everyone's favorite worst card game, Yu-Gi-Oh! Which is unfortunately my current obsession. So we do quite a lot of that on the channel.
Gotcha. I've seen a lot of those as well on your streams as well. But it's glad to know that you have something that you enjoy a lot of. That's honestly the most important thing with the content creation.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with me, Helm-chan. Toad, let's do you next as the other newcomer of tonight. How have you been, bud?
Good. My name's Agent Double Toad 7. I am a mercenary soldier special agent fungus foe that streams on Twitch usually whenever I feel like it. No schedules. Usually like 3 to 4 times a week. I play a lot of retro, modern, and indie games. Usually the Nintendo variety, but not limited to, like anything from like Capcom, Sega, PC games of all sorts. And
Right.
I'm just, I'm always out giving good vibes with me and my fungus force as we go through the battlefields of life together, going with good vibes and real vibes.
That's
It's
always
good chill
good.
time.
That's always good. It's always nice to see streamers of all different backgrounds and varieties camping out every now and then. It is always great to have you with me, Toad. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead through some of our familiar faces as well. Gold over there in the corner. Tell us just a little bit about yourself for any fans that have not been introduced to you yet.
Hello, good evening or good morning from wherever you are watching. My name is Gold Guardian. I am a giant robot VTuber, or for the Japanese term is super robot VTuber from the far fringes of space. And in terms of gaming and content creation, I try to be as close as mechanically um, persuasive as possible. Although I said all of that, and really now I am currently playing a movement shooter out of all things considered. So
Okay.
yes, wait, what else am I supposed to say for this one? Oh,
Just a
no,
little
I
bit,
think it's- I
just
think
a little
it's-
bit about yourself. That's all. Appreciate it, Gold.
a little
Sane.
bit about myself. Yeah.
All right, Sane, you're next. Tell us
No.
just a little about yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Cyber Sane, cybernetically enhanced with 2F from the Net City. Apparently, I'm considered lately a cyber idol. And my usual taste in gaming and media is usually very retro gaming, a lot of JRPGs as well, like some of the people here. And I also love my mecha related or adjacent anime thing. So I hope that I can do some justice to the topics as well here.
I'm sure you'll do just fine, Sane. And I recall that you had me once on your channel as well for a hangout at one time. That was an absolute treat to hang out with you then as well. So it's always nice to have you here on the MNN with me as well, along with our other guests. And last but most certainly not least, Vector, tell us what you are, my man.
Certainly not. Well, this is Vector Spaceman, your friendly neighborhood spaceman and host of the Vector Spaceman Show. We're streaming over on twitch.tv/Vector_Spaceman, where we do gaming, musical content, game dev, as well as animated specials that we put on with fellow VTubers, including Kura Isagami, who got to appear as a little background extra in our latest Halloween special. So you can check that out.
Yes, and you put a lot of time and effort into that. I regretfully was not able to tune into that day of, but yes, I could easily see just by the teasers that you share that you put a lot of time and effort into putting that together. So definitely go give that a look as well when you get a chance.
All the better. Now you can go check it out now when you got the time. Now that your big show gonna be all wrapped up, because we're gonna learn all about bots tonight, you guys. It's gonna be grand. It's gonna be great.
Most indeed. So I'm just still setting up some stuff on my end, making sure it's all good, ready to go. Let me see here. So go ahead and this might get loud for just a minute. So let me put that down. I forgot I didn't realize that there we go. That's what I was looking for. Is a little BGM to kind of set the mood on this end, make sure everything's working as it should. Okay, so while I'm finishing setting things up on my end, I have to ask you, of course, the golden question of tonight. Of course, what is Medarot? Now, just kind of taking on one at a time, starting with Gold over there. What's your what's your knowledge of the series? How much you know of it, my friend?
I watched a few episodes of the first anime that got imported through Western media, and this was back on many moons ago. And also, I did clear both the Game Boy Advance versions of the game. Like back then, you know how Pokemon games tend to have red and blue and all that jazz. The Medabot Game Boy Advance games also had a version where you can play two different starting Medabots.
Right.
So, my younger brother got the Rokusho version. I got the Metabi version, and then that's why we both battle together and stuff. But after that, that's about it.
Nice. So just a little bit of the series with some enjoyment. That's always good. And a lot of the localized games, indeed, were a lot of starting places for a lot of players and fans as well. Helm-chan, how about you? How much you know about the series?
So my knowledge of Medabots probably gives it away a little bit. Yeah, I'm gonna call it Medabots all night, and I can't help that.
100% fine. Tomato. We're talking about the same thing here.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, my knowledge mostly comes from when it was originally airing the anime over here. I remember watching it about as obsessively as I could, and I had one thing that I will never forgive younger Helm-chan for, because younger Helm-chan was very irresponsible. I definitely had a pretty decent collection of the very small figures with like changeable limbs, and a model kit of Metabi that have unfortunately all been lost to time, and I will never forgive myself for it. I made up for it by getting the Kotobuki and Metabi a few years back, but yeah. So I'm kind of realizing that there's a lot about this franchise that I don't know, and I didn't realize how much I didn't know until kind of fairly recently, when I picked up, for entirely innocent reasons, a particular Medabots 3DS game during my trip in Japan, and realized, oh, there's a lot of things here I do not recognize.
Oh, I guarantee, with all the information I put with this together, even just covering the basics of, you know, what's considered common knowledge, I guess, in most of the staple games, it's going to absolutely blow you guys' minds when you find out just how deep the history goes and what all the information is there with it. So I'm really excited to be able to show that to you guys tonight. Sane, you're next. How much do you know?
Oh, hey. So to be sincere here, while everybody was giving their profound answers, I thought, what can I say about it? And to be honest, more than I thought I could, because looking back into the bank of my experience with this franchise from my early days of the young insane, I was of course being a fan of like Pokemon related stuff. That was an immediate thing that caught my attention. However, I appreciated it for what the uniqueness what it was, and I think I have a little bit of an advantage over here on my side, because since I grew up in Puerto Rico, I had all kinds of like international like kind of access to items that were delivered over there, and I remember vividly now. There was a little gacha machine, one of those like you put like a quarter in, and you can get pieces of like little Medabots, so you can start like putting them together yourself. So I
Nice.
spent
Cool.
I spent so many.
dope.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
it's unfortunate that they were so weak, and I don't think any of them stood the test of time, because they were made of like gummy. They were made of like eraser, kind of like eraser quality. So I'm
Right.
pretty sure a lot of them evaporated in time right now, so they don't exist anymore. But I remember those. I remember spending a lot of like quarters in those machines and watching it on TV. And while I didn't deep dive into it in the future, I certainly was always in my radar, whether it was like a friend from school or a friend from like even my college days. Yes, I am that old. It was always in my radar, and I always respected and appreciated for this. And before this call, I actually reference how I also like how one of the sources of inspiration of this series is like the beetle fighting.
Yes, indeed. That's honestly a profound staple that a lot of people have found in the series, and even just with 3 answers alone, we still got 2 folks to go here. That the series has definitely made its rounds, and a lot more people know about it than they realize. But then when I show them a picture of Medabi, they're like, "Hey, I know what that is." But then that's about as far as it goes. So it goes to show, that there's fans all over the globe for this series. It just was a very heavily slept on. But I'm hoping that tonight's presentation, everything is going to most certainly enlighten a lot of folks here, not just my special guest here tonight, but it's something that friends can also look to basically at any time that someone asks what's this series about, and just kind of understand the in-depth basics and the history and the world around it, like what actually makes this whole thing to tick as a united unit outside of what we knew that was localized. So that's my hope for tonight.
Speaking of localized, can I say something really quick?
Yes, go ahead.
I saw a comment from Jerson that really caught me, because I do remember also that in my local TV, while I did watch one of the Spanish episodes, I mean one of the English episodes first on like old TV, I actually did watch it in Spanish as well in my local TV, and there are 2 kinds of Spanish in it, and some of it are here on YouTube.
Yeah, I've heard the dub is pretty widely known, especially in separate languages as well outside of Japanese. And I'll touch on this ever so briefly. It's actually really nice so that the official channel actually released and actually aired all the episodes of the anime over the last couple years, all the way up from the very first episode to Medarot Day last year. They aired the original 52 episodes. They just recently finished back in September, I believe, late September, if memory recalls. They finished airing Damashi, which was the 3rd season, as it was dubbed. Okay. So really exciting to see them officially air that again, and even after so many years, people could kind of like go back and look at it again and just kind of enjoy the glory days, or go back and say, maybe I graded this one a little too harshly. It's actually a lot better than people gave it credit for.
What champs? Is that something you'd still watch right now on their channel?
If they kept the videos up. Unfortunately, much like most other channels that air a lot of stuff, they keep the episode up for a week, and then when the new one comes, they take it down. So I wish I could supply a link to that where you guys could see it in the original JP dub, but unfortunately, things didn't quite work out that well. But moving forward, Toad, how about you? How much do you know about the series, bud?
About as much as Helmchen and Gold mentioned, it's really just about the anime and the video games. I will say a little bit more towards the video games because first off, the Game Boy Advance games were like my first exposure before anything, and the toys before that. So, but I was I played the first, like, I had Rakusho version when I was younger, and then Medabots when I was a teenager. So as a young one, I couldn't get past too much. But then, like, when I got older and I went back to the Game Boy Advance games, I started to understand like all the mechanics, and it was like one of the first times in my life, really, because I didn't play anything deeper than like a Mario RPG, like nothing.
Right.
No JRPGs, no Yu-Gi-Oh, no TCG. Didn't have friends to do TCG with, so like playing that really helped me to like absorb the strats, the parts, what
Absolutely.
everything does, and it made me really love the whole mechanics of everything, and how many strategies, and it helped me to develop a strategical mind that I would develop over time. And now as a young adult, I play a lot more JRPGs. I have better strategies for things like Mario RPGs and stuff like that. And it just really helped me realize how, and even stuff like Advance Wars, which I really enjoy now. I owe it to like Medabots for like teaching me how to do strategic battles and stuff like that. It's something that I enjoy to this present day.
Indeed.
And then I had that same like revelation years later, deep diving after I found out that there was a Switch collection of the Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance games that had only released in Japan. And I was like, wait, this series is still relevant somewhere? And then, you know, from there you go to the rabbit hole of like, oh my God, there not only was more after the Game Boy Advance games, but there was also a DS game or two, and 3DS, and up to a mobile game that exists now.
Indeed.
And what my favorite part about all of it was, it had the same exact type mechanics of damaging parts and strats and all that stuff from the original Game Boy Advance game that I played when I was younger. And I was like, wow, they liked this system so much that they kept it for generations, and that made me incredibly, incredibly happy.
Well, I mean, you know what they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the traditional turn-based RPG it's an old tried and true mechanic, you know? It's something you just can't go wrong with. And it just honestly blows me away, just with these answers, you know, you guys are all telling me, you know, I grew up with it, even just in passing, or played a game and forgot about it and went back to it. It's honestly just amazing, you know, how influential this series was to a lot of us, and we just never paid attention to it, because it was just something so largely slept on and just never really kicked off like a lot of people hoped. But it honestly warms my heart to hear all this, and I'm really looking forward to being able to share a whole bunch of information with you guys tonight on this. And last but not least, yes.
Could I bring up one more thing? I never played this game, and I don't think anyone's mentioned up this point, but I did not only own the little figures, but I also owned a huge stack of trading cards.
Yes,
for
there actually was a TCG of it. Actually, two separate ones.
Yeah, that was I found that interesting as well. Again, I'd never played trading card games when I was younger, but my dad just gave me a bunch of Medabots stuff for one Christmas, and I was just like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And I was like flipping through the cards and I saw some of the anime characters that I recognized. I saw some of the robots I recognized, but then there was like at least like over like 50 more that I never had seen in any capacity ever. And I was like, where did all these come from? And that gave me a little bit more of that curiosity before I found out that the series had kept going later, even in the East further.
Indeed, most indeed.
Yeah, it was cool.
And yeah, the TCG, they actually had two of them. One of them was the original TRPG, the trading card game, and they had a separate one. I think it was OCG. That one unfortunately never really took off in the West all that well because the rulebook was not very clear on how to play. It actually wasn't until like a few years into the life of the Discord server for Project Rising Beetle that some folks came up and said, hey, we figured out how to play the trading card game, because the rules weren't very clear on what to do on your turn. So, but the cards were still really good to collect all the same. They still kept up to date with as a memorabilia thing every now and then, especially with Medarot S when they released certain models for a while. But as we move along here, Vector, last but most certainly not least, what's your knowledge, bud?
Certainly not. So here's a question. Did you ever own any of those Medabot trading cards, Kura?
The cards, unfortunately, not until last year, actually, because I had a very dear friend of mine actually send me a handful of cards that were from the Buddy Fight series as part of a birthday gift they imported to me from Japan. So until then, I knew the cards existed, but I actually never physically had any.
Yeah, I'm looking on eBay right now because I just started hearing about this, and I'm like, oh man, are these things valuable or something like that? And they're selling for like 10 to 20 bucks for an unopened pack, so it's not like they're, you know, like Pokemon or Digimon even.
I'm glad, because I don't have mine anymore.
Collectability. But yeah, maybe you could pick up you could pick up some packs and do some openings on the stream. Wouldn't that be fun?
I mean, if folks are willing, if folks are willing to donate to it, I mean, sure. I've got
like a trading card tournament.
Hey.
We get like everybody a pack, and then we can just have like hand cam where we all just like do a trading card thing.
I mean, hey,
There
I'd
you
be
go.
down for that.
$20 for a Medabots TCG 2-deck starter pack.
I mean,
Yeah.
hey, there you
Right
go.
Right here. There you go. You could play with somebody.
All right.
But let me tell you about my experience with Medabots then. Medaroto, if you will. So I've lived in Spaceman, Vector Spaceman. We're Canadian, and we're a student of animation. And a little bit of trivia is that Nelvana, a Canadian animation studio, was the one who did the Canadian dub of the Medabots animation. So there's anyone within my generation, give or take a few years, is familiar with Medabots, because we've got this thing in Canada where you have to broadcast a certain amount of Canadian content on the air. And so technically, because we did the localization, Medabots counts as that, so it was all over our kids' programming and what have you. So everybody's seen it, everybody's pretty familiar with it, but I never did get to play any of the games growing up. I remember seeing ads for the Game Boy Advance games in like the back of Archie Comics or something like that growing up. We'd see little ads from here and there. But I didn't own a GBA at the time, so I never picked up the game for myself.
That's actually quite impressive.
Got my hands on a few of the little toys with the interchangeable parts. That was sort of the big thing for me, was the customizability of it and what have you. That always intrigued me, of the Medabots series. I was really into that. But here's the question, Cora. Why did it sort of fall off in the West? I imagine that's what we're going to get into tonight. We're going to learn more about that and the history.
So
but besides living in Canada, I've also lived over in Japan, and there you definitely see a difference. There you see Medabots products all over the place still, model kits and what have you, so it's night and day sort of thing.
Oh, definitely, and very impressive with the feedback on Nelvana. That actually reminds me of an interview I had with Faust Logic, who was in charge of the Robattle 3D game way back in the early thousands.
Sorry, the Flash game? The Shockwave game on the website?
The really old one, yes. I had an opportunity to speak with Faust himself on that.
Of a Flash game.
I know this game.
Yep.
So it was
This was the
on
one that
the
was like-
Fox Kids TV website.
Indeed, I had the honor of speaking with Faust several months ago, actually, and that interview actually is on my channel, where I had a chance to ask him some questions on, the behind the scenes and development of that. So it was an absolute honor being able to hear about that. And he mentioned a lot of times as well with Nelvana that it was a very not integral series that they worked with, but it was a very popular one at the time that they worked on. So they were
I have to tell you, the first thing that comes up in videos when you search up Medabots Flash game is your exact video.
Well, I guess I've
So you
made
don't
my
care-
mark on the internet, huh?
Carrying
Hell
Medabots.
yeah.
You made
There we go.
That's amazing.
Oh man, I don't know how to feel now. So it's I've made my mark on the internet. I've made it.
Yeah, let's
Am I
go.
famous now?
Peak, peak.
Imagine being such a Western repository that you got represented in.
Oh man, that'd be
Yeah.
that'd be the dream, to be acknowledged by Imagineer and everybody like that. But I'm just gonna be here, keep doing what I do in the meantime, and if it comes around, then it comes around, and I'm still gonna be reporting on the meta news all the same. But
Nice.
as we do continue on with this, it seems apparent that we have knowledge of a lot of different varying degrees, ranging from I know just a little bit, I grew up with it, forgot it, and even had a little bit of history with it through a lot of studying of their own. So very impressive backgrounds here, and I'm honestly amazed as well by just the diverse feedback here just between all of us. That like I said, it's a very integral series that a lot of us know incredibly well, and just never thought about until it was officially brought to light, and that we're all like, oh, I remember that, or I had the game or the toys or whatever. So it's honestly very impressive, and I'm so amazed honestly as I'm listening to all of you guys and putting this together. But now with all that put to the side, we can officially take a moment to step into the presentation itself. So I'm gonna go ahead and let me switch my windows around so I can do this properly. what I'm going to do is on the streaming end, I'm going to share my presentation and get that live. Let me see, which one is it? It's this one. That one up, and then where is it? There we go. So let me make sure this is behaving as it should. You guys should have Windows projector. No, you don't. So let me switch the window on that as well. Where is it? Up streaming.
I saw
change
my
windows.
horns in that slide over there.
Window projector. I think that's the one I need. Okay, so
Everybody at home, get
Here,
your
there
pencils
we
and
go.
papers ready. This will be on the
Yeah.
test.
Okay, so let me.
I'm sitting next to
this-
Hunter and copying all the homework.
Okay,
That's wisdom.
Don't copy off of me, I'm probably wrong.
Oh, that's not what I wanted. Okay.
I'll take my
so
chances.
I'll make sure everything's behaving as it should. I think everything should be behaving. So let me go ahead and upload that as well.
Hi there, Shaw. I see you.
Here we go. All right, can you guys see it? All right.
Yes.
All
We
right,
can see
perfect.
it.
All right,
The
Yeah.
people at home see it.
all right, perfect. So everything
There we
Now
should
I
be
can.
everything should be behaving as
Easier
it
now.
should.
Refresh.
So
And we
little
go.
bit of a little bit of history behind this presentation. Much like I did say before we got started, this question, this presentation I've wanted to put together of what is Medarots. This is something that is about a year or so in the making. I wanted to do this a while ago, for a long time after I started collecting a lot of information, such as, what is it, what does it do, where's it been, a lot of very big questions, much like I've been asking you guys so far. But I never really did a lot with it, since I had my usual content I was working on, and just other, everyday stuff that I've had to do, so I never had the chance to. But then, when it was suggested to me that, I can host it as a stream, and because why not, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So I started asking around, and long story short, here we all are. And I basically spent the last couple months just absolutely grinding out all those sources that I had, scouring every piece of information I could find to put this bad boy together. So
Aw.
I
You
have
did that
been
for us?
I have been chomping at the bit to put this together, and I've kept my hand incredibly close to my chest for wanting for all the information I'm going to be revealing in this, because just based on the information we have alone, it's honestly amazing what we have so far. But I think a lot of the backside information, a lot of the in-game lore and history, it's a lot of stuff that's honestly going to blow your minds, because this was honestly stuff that was not even touched on or even hinted at whatsoever in any localized games or anime or anything else of that matter. It's completely brand new trailblazed information as far as the Western community is concerned. And when I ran it past all three of my Japanese friends at varying degrees of completion for this presentation, they all said it's all good. All the information's good and clear, good to go. Even my best friend said it's good to go. Don't touch it, you're done. So I'm very excited for this. I'm hoping that this is going to be a very informative moment for all of us here, and it'll be something, like I said, that we can kind of all walk away from as a immediate moment that we can all pull to when we have a friend that says, what is this series? What's it about? Well, I have a friend that did a video on this that I was a guest host in. Here you go. And we can just timestamp, and kind of move past most of it to this particular point. But as I put everything together, just to kind of read off a little preamble I put here to kind of set the stage and everything.
Listen. Listeners at home, you got to understand something before we get into this. So Kura, as we were getting set up today, had the audacity to be like, hey guys, sorry for, doing this all last minute, sort of a rush job. Meanwhile, he's been trying to get us scheduled together for like 2 months. He's been working like for the past full
Last
year to
minute
get
2
this
months.
thing going.
Honestly,
It's
I
gonna
kind of
be
have
great.
this thing bought, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's so chill so
Yes.
far. I'm digging it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so
This is
happy
the-
you guys think that.
Super pro.
You guys
This
are
is
going to be in
better
for a
than-
great show, believe it.
I'm
Yeah,
so
it's
happy you
organized
guys
and
think
everything I've
that.
done.
Most
for years.
well-prepared collab that I have been into. I wish all my collabs were like this.
Oh,
Ah, golly.
oh man,
I
I
you,
gotta
can
say
never
that-
understand.
you
how
guys
anyone
honor
can
me.
Organize collabs like this.
You guys honor me, untouched, but it's just a higher standard, I believe, where, if I'm going to host, I have to go the extra mile and make sure that, all of my guests are comfortable, they're happy, they're ready to go, and because if you guys are all bored or you're just kind of, you guys are all just kind of here for the reason, it's not going to be enjoyable. So I want to make this engaging, not just for any viewers that you guys cycled in from your channels to here, but also for you guys as well. It's because this is something that we're all doing together, and if you guys aren't having fun, then this isn't successful to me.
And you're killing me with that so far.
Okay, so now as we kind of step into this and move officially into the presentation itself, just this little preamble I put together for this. So you guys basically answered the core question already of what is Medarot, but to all the viewers and future viewers that will find this video, to kind of preamble this and begin us as a prelude, what is Medarot exactly? It's a question that has been asked for nearly 25 years by Western fans. Why Medabot and why Medarots instead of Medabots? What's it about? What's the history behind it? Where has it been? Where can I find it, most importantly? There's far too many questions here for Western Medarotters to ask, and sadly no answers without having to deep dive in the internet and have several translators on hand to even try to make sense of what little you do find. Despite Medarot being considered a cult classic known by many far and wide and extremely well loved all the same, its ambiguity has sadly also been its downfall in its hopes to become something great. With this presentation, I hope to be able to answer many questions that countless fans have asked, as an ultimate beginner's guide, so to speak, that anyone can turn to as an open and warm welcome and a deep dive into this previously unknown history. Thank you once again for everyone that has tuned in. Sane, Gold, Helm, Toad, Vector, I'm so happy to have you guys with me. Let's go ahead and finally jump into this and open up on the history that has previously been unknown to basically the entirety of the global community. So the first point that we're going to mention heavily is, what is it? That's one of the biggest questions of the night. What is Medarot? And
what is it though, Kura? Tell us.
Exactly. And a lot of the names as well between Medabots and Medarots. Mostly it was just a localization thing there, but there are a couple things I want to point out specifically before we get started. And that is specifically a couple of the minds that were behind the entirety of the series from the very beginning and the very first game, the manga and everything of the original Medarot 1. The first of which I want to bring is, of course, Mr. Horamarin himself, who is basically the creator of the series. So just to kind of go through some highlights here that I did mention and put down for him, he is the original creator and designer of the series from the very beginning. He started as a mangaka for Comic Bomb Bomb and was allowed a couple of frames in there where he was able to kind of tinker with the design before he came up with it officially. He also is singularly responsible for most of the designs of the early era, which is about between the first 5 Medarots that were released between 1997 and roughly about 2000, 2001. It's about 500 something. And with the exception of about, say, 100 something or so, most of the other designs were all designed by him in-house. He's responsible for a good chunk of the early classic designs, and if you compare them to a lot of the modern designs of today, you can very easily tell which ones were his and which ones were designed from someone else because of a very unique art style.
Definitely gotten more busy over the years, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
For those early ones.
Absolutely, and that was actually a charm that I was able to get from feedback from one of the artists. I will get to that a little further down the line. But he also has remained very much so involved with the series in its development, especially with Medarot S. He is occasionally asked to design a brand new design for the series to kind of keep it going. One set of models he'd been cooking up for like 20 years that he never had a chance to use, so he's been very involved with the series over the course of its several years over the history. And he also stayed in touch with the community for a pretty hot minute through Manga Hot with the weekly Medarot communication. This was also when they were releasing a lot weekly chapters with the Medarot Reloaded Sai, which was the most recent manga that they released with a completely new protag and a completely new story. I will touch on that one just a little bit further down the line because they actually have stayed pretty active in highlighting that one whenever they can, with a very open-ended question on how it ended. But Horamarin is basically the man behind it all. So the one that started the series and a lot of its early history and plot points that kind of established the cornerstones, he's the man behind it. So a lot of what we have and a lot of what we were able to design into later Medarots was basically because of him, as the man that started it all. Now, there are a handful of other developers and other very well-known names and artists that have been very involved in the series through the other years, but one of the other biggest profound names that has been very integral with the series and its early story writing and development is Hirano Kana. Now, to explain who Miss Kana is, she was the story writer and supervisor for the original Medarot 1. So while Horima Rin had the original idea for the plot and the development, Miss Kana was the one responsible for kind of cleaning it up a little bit, making it sound a little more coherent as they proceeded through the game or through the story in the manga and so on. She also was the story supervisor for the Medarot 2 retelling that was released in Medarot S. Basically, it's just the GBA game, but just kind of cleaned up a little bit of the text to kind of advance it along so it's not its own fully drawn-out RPG. She also did graphics and story of Medarot 1, but she also was very well known for being very heavily involved as a story writer between 2 and 4 as well. So not only has Miss Kana been the one responsible for the story of Hikaru in the original Metal Beetle, but she also was the one that made the story of Ikki and Medabi so well known and iconic. It was all because of her, and the story of Medarot 2 through 4 is her characters. And when I had a chance to speak with her, she stated that was basically her favorite generation of being able to work with this series. So you can tell very easily that
That's amazing, honestly. I'm impressed. Whoa,
yes.
A lot of love. You too also put a lot of love. You can talk to these people. What the heck?
Yes, and I will be getting to that momentarily, actually.
You guys... I'm jumping ahead, everybody.
No worries. No worries. All good. All good.
I started digging myself.
All good.
I had to Google the little picture that you put in the slideshow. I did a reverse image. It's so hard to find, but it's like the profile on the Twitter account.
Exactly. Yes, and you guys may also find out that if you look up Medaroto under its Japanese name on YouTube, you may also find an album known as Medarocks. Very good album, by the way. Highly recommend. She is also the lyricist for the lyrical variations of the songs provided in that album.
That's so cool.
So she has been immensely involved with the series and has been very intimately involved with making the story just something that's just truly memorable. Now, granted, the one that we got, the localized version, it just trimmed just a little bit of the detail out, but the story is still because of her. And I'm so excited that because of the fan translations with Medarots 3 and 4 that we can finally understand more of the series that she put so much time and love into. On the topic of Miss Kana, though, much like Sane did allude to, I did actually have the honor about a year or so ago when I started collecting information of reaching out to Miss Kana and being able to ask her a very important question from her perspective. And I asked her the very same thing I asked you all here tonight. What is Medarot to her? And I was able to get a very direct and very intricate answer from her that I actually had the honor of and ability to put here. So, let me see. Sane, if you could actually go ahead and just start us off off here, I'll have this slide for you.
Huh? Okay, hold on.
We're doing a read along.
I gotta keep it engaging, you know?
Okay. It's like classroom. I'm getting PTSD of like just when it's pointed out. Sane, read what's on the board.
It's like a real classroom.
I promise, I'm not gonna be super stressful about it. I just want to keep it engaging for y'all.
No, you're fine.
Appreciated.
Okay, so Hirano Kana, they said, I was inspired by Asimov books, I, Robot, and have incorporated 3 laws of robotics into the world of Medarot as 3 laws of Medarot.
She wasn't the one that basically helped set the founding cornerstone rules of the mechanics behind the world. So a lot of this was her doing, and I had the honor of being able to ask her these questions. And she gave me some fantastic information on this as I was collecting early information. But Sane, if you can go ahead and continue onward with the rest of what she replied to me.
Yeah, I stood up to read that like a proper student. No, I'm continuing. I believe that Medarot is a kind of intelligent race that is separate from humans, with its own will and emotions. In the Game Boy version of Medarot, I wrote that Medarot is a gift from aliens to mankind. That's your answer, everybody. Wrap it up. Anyways, Medarots can be good friends as well as evolutionary force for mankind. However, at times, Medarots can also be a threat to humanity. Whether the future of Medarots and humanity will be a utopia or a dystopia depends on the kind of relationship between them, I believe.
Well, much like you said, Sane, your answer to the most basic question of the night. Aliens.
A gift from the aliens.
Aliens.
Ancient aliens.
PowerPoint too.
I had to do this, guys. I had to do this. The joke basically wrote itself.
I like how you prepared that beforehand.
I had to, guys.
Pyramid.
Guys, I had
got
to.
chills on
Okay,
the spines
this
reading that.
joke wrote itself. I just had to give it form. But yes, according to Miss Kana, the Medarot was basically a gift from an advanced race as a way to see if humanity takes it a step further or if it ends up being its ultimate downfall. And it's honestly profound. It's honestly profound if you think about it like that. You're given basically a very intricate, for lack of a better term, I'll use this term, toy. And they're now just basically saying, what are you going to do with it? And is it a gift that you guys can use for good, or is it going to be your downfall?
It sounds like a far more sophisticated version of the trolley, shopping cart problem.
Yes! Oh,
Yes.
like the litmus test, right? Is that what
Yes.
They gave us the Medabots to see if we could be trusted with them or not. If we treated them badly, they know
It's a
we don't
litmus
deserve to be
test.
part of the great galactic empire.
Oh no.
Crazy.
You know what?
Is that something that gets
That's a good way of putting it.
communicated in the
Yeah,
series at all?
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, though, Helm-chan. That's honestly a great way of putting it. But yes, this is basically Miss Kana's answer when I asked her that same question, what is Medarots? And she's explained not just this as well with the early mechanics, but also went on to explain further with the story that she wrote. With Medarot 1 and 2, she kind of had a little bit of a framework she had to work with, so not as much creative freedom per se. But when she started moving into Medarots 3 and 4 specifically, they gave her more creative freedom with that. And she even went as far as telling me explicitly and outright that the best title that she ever worked on in the series that she loved the most as a story writer was Medarot 4. Because she researched and put so much time and effort into wanting to make it feel real in the world and make it as immersive as possible and something relatable that you could very easily tell. And I'm just going to plug it in here, and I will do it later. There is a fully translated patch for Medarot 3 as well, so we are able to actually see that story as it was played and as it was written, for folks that do want to take a look at that later.
And also the first one, right?
Yes, the first Medarot has been fully translated, the third one as well. Based on what I heard from the translators on the team, they're skipping 2 specifically because the version 2 core, the GBA game, was close enough, they said, to the original text that they really aren't going to focus on it too heavily. So they're going to work their way into 4, and then if they see enough of an interest, they are going to go back and they are going to go back and do the original 2 just to say that they did it for completion. But no real priority on it to
Motivation,
say.
yeah.
But
No reason
as we're moving on here, so the next question ultimately is, what is the story behind Medarot? Because there's a lot of different protags, as you guys may have seen through the years, and all the different volumes and commercials and everything. Each one tells kind of a different story to a point, and ultimately it kind of depends on which one you're looking for. Like the original story of Hikaru and Metal Beetle of Medarot 1. It was kind of like your general school days kind of thing to a point. Like they had their everyday adventures as small children because, again, as a reminder, these are actually small 10-year-olds that are allowed to run around with these small weapons of mass destruction because it's totally normal.
Every anime protagonist of this sort had to be a 10-year-old.
Exactly,
but never.
Exactly, yes. So it was, for the most part, kind of a mecha school days kind of thing, but on a regular, everyday kind of basis with of course, with the customizable fighting robots. The same thing can be said primarily for Medarot 2, where it's, again, kind of a school days kind of thing, but it also does have its own story as it starts diving into kind of the back end, the behind the scenes as to what exactly Medarots are and why they're so commercial and where exactly they came from. They dived into this even more so with Medarots 3 and 4, especially more so. And then with Medarot 5 specifically, which is the one over on the far right with the orange-colored beetle type, the story behind that one is you are the new kid, Koishimaru, who moved in the village of Susutaki. You are the new kid in town, trying to and you joined the Medarot Club to try to keep it from being disbanded by the. Well, yeah, because there's only 2 or 3 members, but disbanded by the school admin because there weren't enough members. So it's again kind of a school days thing to a point, but they also go back and touch a lot of really unique points that help Medarot stand out on its own. Medarot Reloaded Sai specifically, which is the story that really picked up on its own with Manga Hot, like I said. The story behind that one specifically is actually a whole lot darker than a lot of the previous ones, based on my understanding. primarily because the main character's name is Kagami, and he is actually a retired Medarotter, not necessarily younger age, but more like high school, young adult age. He is actually a seasoned Medarotter, and actually stepped away and retired from the ring for various reasons. When his sister is kidnapped by the Robo-Robodan, they threaten him to enter the upcoming Robattle Championship and earn the event medal, or they take her life. So now he has to reactivate.
Wow.
So now he has to reactivate his old partner, which is ironically a new shape for Metabi, and they have to basically challenge in this tournament and figure out what exactly is going on and why everything feels so fishy as he's participating. But this story is actually fully finished as well. So all the volumes are released, the story has had its the end, and this is basically very easily and readily found all the way through to its completion.
You said this is 4?
How's... Oh, you go first, sorry.
Sorry, what was that, Toad?
You said this was 4?
This was for Reloaded Sai. On the slide here, this is the one at the very
Oh,
bottom
okay.
center.
Oh, bottom. Oh, that one. Okay.
Yes,
Cool.
that is the most recent manga currently to date that's been aired and published, and it is currently available. They actually have all the volumes digitally available for purchase, so you can go and find all those.
Oh.
Now, granted, they are translated, but you can find these pretty easily, based on which volume you're trying to find.
And how was this one received? Like, was this seems like quite a different direction for the series? Did people seem to be generally on board for this, or?
It was pretty widely received overall, because they not only introduced a lot of older or even some of the more modern designs as the main characters that take the stage, but they've also made it a point to introduce a number of fan contests where fans could submit their own designs, and the winning 3 or 4 were made into official Medarots.
Oh, that's
That's
wonderful.
nuts.
So they introduced a lot of brand new ones, both designed from fans and official ones from in-house, as they were revealing that series, and showing another facet as to what exactly made Medarot what it is, both on the very appealing front of being small, customizable robots, but also on the darker end of just what exactly that entails, and what, some of the lesser known, things you should be concerned about with small robots capable of such destruction.
Yeah, I just can't get
Can
over
I
the idea
just-
of hitting high school and being like, I'm retired. I'm out of this game.
Yeah, basically.
And
Yeah,
then
basically.
getting pulled back in.
That's the point I want to make as well. If you look at all the art presented here, I love how the main character gets progressively older, just like the audience. And
Yes,
it's-
indeed. Now, one of the things to mention as well on the pro tags, though, is Medarot 1 basically was the story of Hikaru and Metal Beetle, like I said. 2 through 4 was the story of Ikki and Metabi, as we know them. But in Medarot 5, like I said, is a new pro tag named Koishimaru. Now, depending on which game or manga you choose to go with, you'll actually have a completely different pro tag. So, for instance, like I said, Kagami is the main pro tag of the Reloaded Sai manga. The one here in the middle right is named Azuma, who basically is the next generation directly up from Ikki and Metabi, where that generation had already grown up and kind of carried on with their lives while still being Medarotters in the world. As Azuma is basically the next generation, so he basically is interned and trained much the same way Hikaru did with Ikki in early Medarot 2.
So I noticed that you said a couple times you've said Metal Beetle. Is that a just manga versus other media distinction, or is it a specific version of Metabi, or just a localization thing?
So, actually, interestingly enough, Metal Beetle and Metabi are actually 2 completely separate models, or they are actually classified as 2 separates.
Aw.
Metal Beetle
Kinda cool.
is the original KBT type that Hikaru started with, the one that started it all. And when they introduced Metabi in 2, the story behind it essentially is it's a refurbished, cleaned up version of the design, and just the name is simply shortened to Metabi.
Can I ask a question about that?
Oh, snap.
Answer.
So what was with the one from the GameCube game that has a completely different design, yet it's still the same Metabi from 2 to 4?
So that is also a completely brand new upgrade as well. The model name is technically Saikachi's, but because Metabi is a more iconic name due to the anime primarily,
Okay.
they mostly just let him keep the name Metabi and kept going with it.
Sort of like a localization thing?
For the most part,
Okay.
yes.
So is the
Like
distinction?
iPad generations or something. Very little distinction.
Basically.
Me over here, like, there's a GameCube game? Huh?
Yes, exactly.
So So is the distinction between the Meta Bee, Metal Beetle? Because something I've noticed as someone who's very casual, I said I bought the Kodabuki Metabee kit, and that has a detail which you can see on some of these artworks here, in like the bottom middle, bottom right one. The reverse of the shoulder has like these black tubes, and there's a yellow cap on the end. Is that a change, or is that a version thing? Because I am certain that was not in the anime, but I'm not sure if I've just guessed it myself into that.
So the anime version specifically was kind of different, mostly for animation reasons. But as far as the model itself is concerned, physically they're technically one-to-one, just some very minor cosmetic changes between the two of them. Typically, they're mostly portrayed Metal Beetle as a darker brown color instead of the traditional yellow. And his angles are a little round, a little more beveled, whereas Meta B is showcased as the very bright, iconic yellow and white with a lot sharper angles on his armor.
Gotcha. So the yellow kind of cap pieces on the tubes on the shoulders, those are Meta B details. It's just they didn't have them in the anime, basically.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Plus, it's also worth noting in the anime that the Meta B that Hikaru gave to Ikki was actually his old model that was reboxed. So it technically, quote-unquote, is Metal Beetle, but when it was registered under Ikki as his Medarotter, it was simply retitled as Meta B.
I see.
Okay.
Exactly. But as we officially hear, this is actually one of the biggest crowning glories of this presentation, pretty much through the entirety of what I'm going to talk about, is the fact that there is actually an official timeline for the series that was found untranslated in a Medarot 1 manual, and it was later added on and expounded upon in later titles. This was actually discovered actually much earlier this year, back in about March or so, by a user in our Discord channel, and he took the time to translate it properly from start to finish. And I gotta say, the stuff that was introduced in this will honestly blow your minds. Like, they went as far as going into explaining, you know, all the patents and all the research that went involved in what exactly led to its development on the mechanical end as far as Medarot is concerned. And I could honestly make this a whole presentation onto itself with all the information they touched on. But would you believe me if I said that the historical timeline for Medarots actually started all the way back in 1938?
What?
I kid you
That's
not.
wild.
The very first documented instance here is back in 1938, where the patent and research was first approved for research for a hexagonal numismatic stone. This is before they ever started discovering and researching these
Medabots.
things. Yeah, this is basically when they first started putting the patents for research together and officially getting it going. But as we continue on through this first one, Toad, actually, how about you go ahead and read that next one for me?
Sure. Once it pops up for me.
Yep.
First, 1947, first contact in history recorded in New Mexico from a crashed spaceship.
That is
Nice slide.
that is an official frame from the Medarot 1 manga, by the way.
Oh, it was aliens.
Oh, it was aliens.
Oh
Indeed.
yes.
First
Got
contact.
the little UFO guy.
Look
Marcianito.
at-
Yep,
Yeah, look at that. They even make it resemble the Roswellian aliens.
exactly.
Dame tu cosita.
Exactly. And there actually is a design that's been around since Medarot 1 named Cosmo Alien, that has pretty much remained very largely responsible for a lot of these sightings. So he was the very first that they saw back in New Mexico, back in 1947, not too long after the initial patents were first approved for research. But as we go on down here, Gold, how about you read that next one for me?
Oh, all right. 1976, Dr. Atom Akibahara. Do they really need to use the name of that location? 1976, Dr. Atom Akibahara, titled Dr. Medarot, introduces the first 6 working prototypes based on the 1938 research.
Dr. Aki?
Yep, the very same.
Where have I seen that picture before?
That one actually has been used a lot in a lot of the early history whenever they showcase like ancient or early designs in the manga as it's portrayed. But these models that you see here in this frame are the original 6, not fully sentient, but at least fully functional prototypes that Dr. Medarot had actually managed to get running on their own to properly showcase and proof of concept the Medarot design before it was made officially public and commercial. But
I
moving
feel like
forward,
one of these things is not quite like the other.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah, one is just really big.
exactly.
This ruins Medarots for me. I'm sorry.
It
Like,
get-
I'm looking at the alien and I can't unsee aliens now in the design of these little dudes.
Yeah.
All right,
It's
Hel-
like,
Helm-chan, how
Doesn't
about you
sound
read the
ruined,
other
it
half?
sounds
How about,
enhanced.
how about you read the
Also,
other half of that
my-
one, Helm-chan?
when you met me, sorry, I had the eyes of that creature. It's the same as my VTuber model's like head on my previous model.
That's right.
Oh man, you're right.
Go ahead. I'm so sorry for
Alright.
interrupting.
Helm-chan,
No,
if you
okay.
could go ahead and read that
Yes,
second
in
bit for me.
1976B. Four of the prototypes were stolen by an acquaintance of Dr. Medarot and used in a mild-scale toilet paper theft. Sorry, that sentence didn't go where I was expecting it to.
I kid you not. That's legitimately how it wrote in the story. I was surprised when I found this actually illustrated.
Oh my god.
Prototypes 4 and 5 are equipped with the very first combat parts, metal cannon and power Ochisuka. I'm going to go with that. To recover the models. Prototype 0 loses control and is destroyed in the chaos.
Now, like I said, I kid you not, I was surprised when I was scouring the manga frames and discovered they actually illustrated this. I thought it was mostly just something they did for flavor text, but no, this was a legit canon event in the timeline that helped define what was Medarot in its
Toilet
early years.
Paper theft.
What
We want
exactly?
that. If you're gonna make deep lore, be proud of it.
What exactly do you
Exactly.
define as a
Those
mild-scale
cannons-
toilet paper theft?
I mean,
Both
So-
of those
when was-
robots look like they could launch TP from them.
Now,
Yeah,
to explain the
true.
history behind the theft in particular, the way it was explained to me for clarification was there was I think there was a rising surge in oil price at the point, so prices were basically going up on everything. But the classmate that was mentioned here, the acquaintance, he stole four of the prototypes to basically try to break into one of the stores and try to make off of what he could find. I'd honestly argue kind of the same way that people were freaking out with over COVID back in 2020. So,
Yeah,
I was gonna say,
2020
those
also
are the
had the
times.
great
Yeah.
toilet paper theft as well.
yep,
But
yep,
imagine if we had
the future.
robots to help us out.
yep, exactly.
That's
Yep, exactly. Can I explain the event from 1976? Yes, so basically this acquaintance that stole the first four prototypes, that was his plan ultimately, but he couldn't necessarily get too terribly far because, again, the prototypes were not designed to be fully sentient. They were fully functional, they could move on their own, they could take orders, but they weren't personable. They were just robots that took orders essentially. In fact, they're so old at that point and so early in development that prototype 0 specifically actually still ran on computer paper. Like they actually had to feed or roll into his backside for him to process orders, or he had no clue what he was doing.
kind of cool.
And what
I've always
happened
wanted to see what ancient Medabots like that would look like. From a
now
period of
what
time.
actually happened was when Dr. Medarot actually first found the four prototypes in the middle of the crime and brought prototypes 4 and 5. Apparently, in the squabble, the computer paper that was feeding into prototype 0 got replaced with a roll of toilet paper. So let's just say he didn't quite know what he was doing.
Yeah.
So, but yes, just to mention something else specifically on this particular event with metal cannon and power Ochitsuker. As you see here, the cannons are kind of obvious, speak for themselves, but I'm going to tell you up front, the power Ochitsuker is not the entirety of the leg part, much like it is as portrayed in current designs. It's actually the shoes.
Huh.
They had
Oh,
mechanically powered shoes that were defined as power Ochitsuker, and the original model basically just slipped them on like a pair of sandals and took off.
Wow.
Robo kicks.
Exactly, yes. So I was genuinely shocked when I found this officially illustrated all the way through, and I'm like, hey guys, check this out, it actually coincides. So no, it's not just something they wrote for flavor text. This is a very important moment in history that helped define a lot of it. But yes, I was so excited when I found this in pictures of the earlier prototypes as well. But as we move forward in the timeline, moving on to the next half, Vector, how about you go ahead and read that next one for me?
We love to read things. 1996. Fossilized metals found worldwide. Global archaeology boom.
This is where they really start getting to the history behind how long Medarots have been on Earth, how long they've been there or what exactly left them there to begin with, because they're finding all these fossilized hexagonal stones in these archaeological sites. And they're like, wait a minute, this is very similar to the research that perhaps was founded back in 1938. I wonder if there's a connection here. So that's what sparked a whole new boom of exploration, of digging in all these ancient places, temples, pyramids, and everywhere else, just trying to see if maybe they left them in points of interest, and sure enough, they absolutely did. As we move further here...
Jurassic Park come out. Is there a coincidence? I think maybe.
Exactly, yeah. And that leads up to the turn of the century at the year 2000. So nearly 62 years after the very first patent was approved for research, the creation of Medarots using metals as brains begins. This is where they're officially putting the development and production into full swing, making it preparing it to be fully functional and commercial for the everyday use. So it wouldn't be too much longer, as you see here, only 2 years later, that the global robot boom would finally hit the world by storm in every corner of the globe. They're made 100% commercial. You can find them anywhere, buy them from anywhere. Everybody and their friend had a Medarot. And it's because of the research that started all the way back in 1938. But as we move forward here, that unfortunately was not meant to last. Toad, if you could read that next one there for 2010.
Global incident. The 10 Days of Darkness occurs. Rewrites many of the laws and protocols around Medabots to prevent another similar disaster.
Now, this was touched on rather lightly in the anime, if you guys actually recall that term, 10 Days of Darkness. Does it ring a bell to any of you at all?
No, I only watched barely a bit of season 1, and I still haven't finished
I
it.
don't really even recall the alien stuff being brought up in the original series. It could have been because I was a child and I wasn't paying close attention.
Aliens actually was not really touched on.
Novel.
Aliens actually was not touched on very often in the series. It was like a very passing comment more at the very most, but not really expounded upon. But the 10 Days of Darkness is actually a cornerstone and monumental moment in the history, basically explaining what happened there. Leading up to this point in 2010, I did not include it in my presentation here, was when the very first World Row Battle Championship was hosted. This is when countries from all over the world would train up and determine which 3 Medarotters of their country would best represent them in a World Row Battle Championship to take the stage, as to which country was the best of the best. This was relatively similar to that event and kind of coincides with it. Long story short, alongside the eclipse of discovering the early origins of Medarot at this point, because they were also discovering a lot of the early designs fossilized and remains in a lot of ruins or a lot of pyramids or temples that were not really touched on or even knew that was even there until they found it recently. But long story short, the 10 Days of Darkness was a moment where, in light of the discovery of all these early models and the original plans of the time, all the Medarots of the world went berserk. They stopped accepting orders, they stopped listening to orders, and they basically had a whole period of time where they had turned on the people that they once called friend.
This is an Evangelion reference. Look at that.
It kind of reminds me of also
the first impact.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me also of Mega Man X as well, and some of that like laws of robotics stuff mentioned from earlier also kind of makes me think of X.
Exactly.
There was that same sort of like free will going on in the laws of robotics and whatnot.
Exactly.
Now, listen. Nobody could have foreseen that if we were going to start giving, alien drones away to children and anybody who wanted to buy them off the shelf, that something like this could have happened. There was no way we could have predicted, people.
You know what? Valid point, 100% valid. And actually touching on what you said as well, Toad, it actually leads into a much further event down the line, much after the 10 Days of Darkness, and they basically just kind of recovered from that and figured out what happened. Back in 2020 of this point, new Medarot series and generations were developed up to this point. New designs, new styles, new combat types, new everything basically. Additionally, they also had numerous AI and security protocols implemented in the commercial models, such as a registration system to curb the epidemic of stray Medarot incidents, which are basically Medarots that either ran away from home or were abandoned with no owner, and they were just left to wander freely with no rhyme or reason. One of the
license for that Medabot.
Yes, actually, it's you joke about it, but it actually was a very tantamount thing. Like if you were to buy a Medarot officially and set it up, you would actually need to register it and be given a license, like a key card that you could present if you wanted to participate in tournaments or exhibition matches or anything like that. That's what this was for.
It's a weapon license, basically.
Basically.
Ikki didn't get one in the anime. from what I
Yeah.
know.
He actually did. I think it was touched on briefly, but it was never officially shown. It became
Yeah.
kind of a tantamount thing that was required for all owners. So that way, if, say, a model got lost, or it was damaged, or it was stolen, they could search a serial ID for the model that they owned and, of course, help find it or keep track of it. But
I was
I
going
would
to
say it's
say,
surprising that wasn't a thing already to begin with. You would think that, you know, a setting where you have these little robots that can go about and do their own thing, you'd think that that sort of registration would be something that they would have thought about years ago. I mean, just look at what you need to do to have a car in the real world.
yeah, basically.
And the car can't go off on its own.
Still ended up doing
Kid,
crimes with
You
them.
can't drive a gun. You can't drive a car, kid. However, you can have this gun.
Yeah, basically.
walking gun.
Yeah, basically. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually did, and around 2020 they actually hammered down on them and kind of cleaned up a lot of the rules to prevent something like the 10 Days of Darkness from happening again. Because the 10 days, that was not something that was controlled to one particular area. That was all Medarots worldwide had gone berserk for this period of time. So they all had to really crack down and try to figure out what happened and implement new protocols to ensure it did not ever happen again within their power.
Well, we told them not to do it again, so it should be all right.
Exactly. Now, all this is just to show, because I have to say it. This is just proof, and I've been seeing this comment a lot in my chat as I've been keeping tabs on it. We live in the wrong timeline. Let's be real. In 2020, we're getting sentient pet robots you can buy at your local convenience store. And what did we get in 2020? What did we get? A pandemic.
Yeah, we got lockdown. That's
Yeah,
not
I
as
mean,
fun. That's not
We got
nearly
the
as
wrong
fun.
toilet paper theft.
Yeah, exactly.
We got the
Get it,
wrong
bro.
artificial. We got the wrong artificial intelligence.
Yeah, no
Speaking of
kidding.
timeline
Oh.
questions, so I don't seem to recall there ever being like an abundance of like really futuristic tech depicted in the anime. Maybe it gets touched on more in the manga series or something like that. But I always found it odd that this display of advanced robotics was only ever limited to like commercial, like Robo
Yeah,
Friends
toy.
sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Because again, it basically was designed, the way they wrote the story and the history was supposed to be the same time, same world that we live in now, but just so far developed in the realm of robotics and artificial intelligence. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the computers and tablet designs would be relatively similar to what we have now, but some of it would still indeed be advanced relative to how it would coincide with the Medarot
Hold
development.
on, yeah, because I was thinking about. I knew there was some sort of conveniences that the characters had. Because in the very early episodes, at the first episode or two, he describes it as a notebook, and that was before MacBooks and stuff like that were developed, and it was
Oh,
digital.
like a
So
tablet?
there was still that sort of modern technology of what they predicted what modern technology would be.
Okay.
So
They still use
Exactly.
we had
floppy
a
disk,
digital notebook.
Exactly.
See, I'm
Yeah.
just gonna have to go rewatch the series. That's what I'm getting hyped for.
Find the
I mean,
floppy
hey,
disk
there
in
you
the
go.
old
Watch
anime.
party there, Vector.
Yeah, honestly, I'd be down. I need.
Let me see. Reading my comments here. Gabriel Baron makes a good point as well. To be fair, there was also a whole space station thing in Medarot Navi. Yes. I did not touch on that in the timeline as well, but literally from the year 2020 onwards, and again, I did not mention this in my presentation because space reasons, but basically around this point as well, there was also a company that was developed when Medarots first officially hit the market called Robattle Research Limited. And around the year 2020, when they really started picking up, they launched a space station into orbit called the Cluster. And basically what the cluster modules was a controlled environment, an exclusive Robattle research facility that they could control every biome for development and see just exactly how their prototypes would fare, what needed worked on, how did they perform, what needed done better. It was a completely excluded and controlled area that they could focus on. And the entire game of Medarot Navi actually focuses on battling in all these different biomes. I will touch on that just a little bit further down the road, though, because that is a whole topic unto itself that I want to cover as well. Of course, briefly in detail, but as we move forward here to kind of keep time going. But yes, it's just all more proof to show that we live in the wrong timeline. Like, we could have easily been having sentient pet robots as friends, and we don't. But
Instead, all we got was battle bots and stuff like that.
Yes. Now, one of the other big questions, and you guys very largely alluded to this in all your answers when I asked you the same question, are the key differences between the manga, the anime, and the video games. And the big question asked, because a lot of people will ask, which one's the official answer? Like, which one's the big story? Because they all are relatively similar. The correct answer is all of them. It doesn't matter.
I figured it was.
It doesn't matter which one you pick. Like, a lot of you guys started with the anime, some of you started with the manga or the games. They all tell roughly the same story. The difference is they kind of hash on some points in one, they kind of skip over them in another for varying reasons. But for the most part, say for instance, excuse me, if you watched the original anime from start to finish, you kind of have a pretty solid idea of the story of Medarot 2, roughly, with some minor elements of 3 and R mixed in. Alongside with Medarot 2, the game, relatively similar thing there, but with some more detail on the back end. Or even with the manga, with a lot of details that were not covered in either the game or the anime. So it doesn't matter which one you pick, like I said, because you're still going to get the same story and most of the same details all the same.
No, it's like 3 or 4 different people telling the same story.
Exactly.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yep, you were going to say something, Helm?
I was basically about to say the same thing.
Yep. Yep, so it doesn't matter which one if you decide to take an introductory into it as well, because you can actually find the manga pretty readily available, like I said, as digital downloads. They aren't necessarily translated, unfortunately, but you can still collect them and try to run machine ones all the same and just kind of see what you can get out of it. I will touch on this a little further down the line, but there are actually a handful of chapters that were fan-translated between the original Medarot 1 and a handful of chapters from Reloaded Sai. Unfortunately, that has not picked up in the last few years, but the Medarot 1 manga has actually been picked back up again if you guys want to take a look at that if you have not already.
I'm sure you'll probably mention this later if there are, but are there any, is there any, like, Medabots media that is explicitly not canon?
It kind of depends, because
all
people...
of Kura's fan art.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have so many designs. Trust me, if you take a look on Twitter or Pixiv, you'll find at least a couple thousand different fan designs that honestly all should be made official because they're just so well
I've
done.
seen some fantastic ones, yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If, like, in the case of, say, for example, Gundam, which is a series I'm very big into, Gundam has like a few stories that take place in the same universe but are like explicitly not canon. So like Gundam Thunderbolt is the same setting as the original Gundam series, but is explicitly not canon. I was just wondering if there's anything like that.
It's kind of hard to say, honestly, because it's a lot of the timeline mentions a lot of the games kind of in a proper order. So, like I said, between Medarots 2 through 4, which is the story of Ikki and Metobi, when they pick up in Medarot DS with Azuma as the new protag, you actually do run into iconic characters such as Ikki and Arnika and so on, but they're all grown up. So it's kind of obvious to tell at that point that, you know, DS and 7 kind of takes place sometime farther after, you know, 2 through 4. And there's a couple other games that supposedly very heavily are implied to be running in tandem with another game or not too far before or after. It's honestly kind of hard to tell which ones are considered non-canon or side storylines or anything like that. So it's just not something that's been fully developed or really even explained in the series for the most part. So we kind of picked up on the fact that they all kind of follow a chronological order to a point.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the fact that there aren't any that are obviously not canon means that there's enough room to assume they are.
Exactly, yes. To answer a question here from Noctis, yes, Medarot DS is technically considered Medarot 6. A lot of early promo art for it when it was released back in 2010 actually had Ozma with the big 6 on his jacket, but when they officially released the game, they just called it Medarot DS, because, well, a lot of games that were releasing stuff on that system all went with DS in their title. So, but yes, canonically, Medarot DS is kind of considered 6, and just touching the tangent briefly, 7 isn't necessarily a direct sequel, it's more like a rehash proper telling / retelling of the original 6, but with better detail. So those two are kind of one-to-one, but not directly. They're also not direct sequels to each other. Yeah, 7 is basically a reimagined of DS, Gabriel Baron, I do see you there. But as we move along ahead into the further discussion of what exactly makes a Medarot, now, if you guys have actually seen...
We already covered this.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. But one of the big questions that was ultimately asked, and if you watch the anime, even just the first couple episodes, this answer might be relatively easy. as just kind of some of the core components that go into what make Medarots, you know, what makes it walk and talk and move around. Some of the core elements that go into making one. The first of which, of course, is the tin pet. This is basically the core frame that everything's built on, and more or less the equivalent of its skeleton. Gold, if you'd like to go ahead and read all those for me.
Yes. The tin pet, the skeleton of the Medarot, muscle cables invented by Dr. Medarot in 1993, autonomous self-preservation system called Slave Timer Slave, developed by Dr. Fushihara in 2009.
Now, this is something that's not necessarily touched on, and the anime kind of alluded to it, but also they didn't. But I do want to highlight on the topic of the muscle cables, because in the anime they portray the tin pets as flexible as a human skeleton, but stronger than diamond. And every time you see a tin pet, they're often portrayed as hard, rigid frames. But
That
would
seems
you?
a bit hyperbolic.
But would you guys believe me if I said that that these muscle cables actually are a little more intricate than that?
I suppose they'd have to be.
Now,
Yes.
if I showed you this, would you believe me?
What are we
Oh,
looking
so
at?
limbs are actually
Little
cables.
wiggly, flexible fella.
Oh,
So to
Oh.
explain
He's
the
made of
mus-
spaghetti.
so to explain the muscle
Like a
cables,
spaghetti.
yeah, exactly. To explain the muscle cables specifically, which is what makes them very unique in the sense that they can fit in very unorthodox pieces of armor or leg designs that you don't think would fit
That-
them.
Makes sense.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
The way
My
muscle
kid self is very satisfied right now. Holy crap. I've always wanted to know, why are they like that?
muscle cables were originally explained to be basically neuron cables, where if they detect an energy presence flowing through them, much like say a nerve ending in a human arm, they become hard and rigid so that you can move it like a proper bone. But if there is a lack of power, or if they are disabled or turned off, they're considered weak and limp. So this is why a lot of tin pets are actually portrayed properly like this, and why they can be seen and be basically the equivalent of crammed into a lot of these more unorthodox designs and actually still fit.
Just stuff it in there.
Wow.
Yeah,
I-
basically.
Makes
I'm
perfect sense.
educated tonight.
Spaghetti.
I remember I forget whether it was in the anime or in the games, but I remember there was a couple of Medabots where when their parts got blown off, the tin pet beneath it clearly looked larger than the part. I'm like, how does that work? You can't shrink it, but that
Same for the
explains it
video game.
perfectly.
Exactly. And it's also for the very same reason that this was possible in the original Medarot 1.
What the?
Now, to
I
explain this
do.
To explain this frame in detail, this is actually in the very first
Explain
chapter,
this.
by the way. So, long story short, Hikaru actually is given Metal Beetles parts, metal, and watch. He was given a whole starter set by his dad when they first launched. So, this is when Medarots first hit the big commercial boom to the public. Hikaru started putting them together and got bored. So, much like any other 10-year-old would, he put him down half-built and ran off to go play with Bonaparte, which is his pet dog. Ran into some trouble a little later on, but at that point he also forgot and didn't realize that the metal was already inserted in the body and he was slowly powering up. He just took his time sleeping in a little bit. But by the time that Metal Beetle is officially introduced, again, as you see, he's half-built, he's not ready to actually fight, and his legs actually don't work. So,
I have no legs and I must row battle.
so he climbed on Bonaparte and said, "Onward, my valiant steed!" And he rode Bonaparte into battle.
Please tell me they've made an actual Medabot part based off of this panel.
No,
They
unfortunately they have
should.
not, but...
Oh, missed
dog
opportunity.
What a missed opportunity.
Very missed opportunity.
Somebody throw the idea at them, please.
Yeah, exactly. But this is why a lot of the early designs make a lot more sense now that you see what the original Tin Pets are capable of, and they're not very hard, rigid frames. But something else to touch on with this slide, of course, is the SLAF system. Now, the way SLAF was designed, you guys kind of remember how in the anime it's sometimes portrayed where if they take light damage, it kind of fades the color of the part and they can't use it, it becomes deadly.
Yeah.
Like one of the first episodes.
So,
Peppercat gets that blue
have-
arm.
Yeah.
So have you guys also seen at points where the color would sometimes revitalize itself, where it changes back to a big,
No.
vibrant color? So the reason
Not-
for that is because of the SLAF system. And to explain, it's kind of like the bloodstream in a tin pet, where if it's laced with very small nanomachines that can detect for damage and repair very minor scrapes, scuffs, or cuts, relatively easy without having to undergo massive moderate repairs. So say for instance if an arm is shut off because a nerve ending got shot and grazed, it can repair that over time and once it's fixed, regain use of that arm. But if it's very heavy damage, such as say the arm got blown off, then you'd have to of course take that down or to a repair shop and get it looked at properly. But the slash system is what kind of keeps them running, as well as like an internal lubricant so they don't freeze up or rust up when they're fighting. This is kind of what allows to keep them going. And it's also been mentioned that because of the slash system, it does also need to be occasionally fleshed. So of course they will need to replace it every now and then and pump a new set into the body to keep them going.
So they gave this tech to children to do battle things with.
Yeah.
I mean, it explains why a lot of children in that era also a whole lot more responsible because they actually would take good care of them.
Kura, question: what does SLAF
yes.
stand for?
I did see it at
Japanese acronym, is that why?
I did actually see a translation for it at some point, but sadly I do not have that on me at this current point. But I believe it does stand for something as to the particles that comprise it and the nanomachine specifically. But
That sounds really cool.
yeah,
It's like robot blood.
yeah, but basically that's basically what it is, and that it was another system, as you saw here, invented in 2009. So this is what started coming out with the newer generations of Medarots, where the newer designs started coming out, and a lot of the newer, I just say quality of life improvements or upgraded body forms started coming in, and a lot of these more seasoned Medarotters would probably start retiring the older models because these work a whole lot better. And they start discontinuing the older models because, they aren't making parts or they aren't maintaining them as often anymore. So that is basically the first element that comprises of Medarots is the tin pet, its internal frame that you build everything on. The second piece here in particular is, of course, the meta parts. This is what designs and defines its shape, its appearance, and of course the ever iconic customization feature. But as we go into this, Vector, if you would like to read off that frame for me.
Metaparts, ladies and gentlemen, the body of the Medarotto. Developed with neuron fiber resin polyester, or NFRP, and invented by Dr. Medarot in 1998. It comprises 4 parts: the head, right arm, left arm, and the legs.
Now, the NFRP specifically is mentioned a handful of times, but this also coincides pretty heavily with the SLAF system that was designed on the tin pets. So, much like I said, if they take very minor armor or very minor damage that they can be repaired pretty easily, the body can rely on the SLAF oil to kind of take care of itself over time, much like, say, if you get a cut on your arm, it'll heal with a little bit of time. That's what it's able to do. And the NFRP is also a very easy alloy that they can use and produce to actually make all the parts and actually have a whole bunch of variety and customization options to them. So as you see here, just a handful of different parts that are available just in these frames alone, that they all come in different shapes and different sizes. But the most important feature that comprises of Medarot is, of course, the customization option. The ability to mix and match parts suiting exactly to the needs that you're looking for in that particular situation. Fighting on aquatic terrain? Well, switch some sea legs in there and you're good to go. If your opponent has a fight trap that prevents you from getting up close, well, guess what? Equip a rifle on your bad boy and you're ready to go.
Or just be a vanilla fella and make all the parts match everything.
You would-
Most of the
Hey,
time.
nothing wrong with
bashing.
that. Nothing wrong
I mean-
with that. But yeah, the kit bashing. See, this is what always engaged me as a young spaceman, was the
Yeah.
Medabot as a medium of self-expression.
Yes.
Owing to the modular nature of the tin pet and the different components and what have you.
Yes.
So a child or a player in the sense of the games can outfit their Medabot in whatever fashion they think is best for different roles or utilities, or just for cosmetic desires if you just want something that looks fancy. But at the same time, when you think about it, the Medabot should also be an example of self-reflection, because the Medabot is intelligent, it's self-aware, it's very human-like, it has its own personality, and that personality should reflect aspects of its companion owner, I think, when you get into talking about the lore and the story and what have you.
100%.
Matter for
That's
the
good.
animated and literary media beyond the games, but I think that's something that sets Medarot apart from some of its
Exactly.
contemporary series.
And something to mention as well is in later games, I think it's in 3 they introduce this. If it's not in 3, it's in 4. A coloring system Now, granted, in early 8-bit, you could only it was like just a color filter that overlaid on top of the parts you picked. But
Like a palette, yeah.
Yeah, but in Medarot S, as you see here, with a lot of these newer models, basically it was just a color filter with hue and saturation. So, say, for instance, if you liked the part but didn't like the color, you could basically put a color filter on that, just kind of help it match the overall aesthetic you're looking for. So, like you said,
so nice.
like you said, Vector, it's a
Breaker
form
4
of
does that, thank God.
it's a form of expression. So if you find something that actually truly matches, even if the parts don't fit well at all, there's always ways that you can make it work, such as with a color
You can,
filter.
like, unify the colors pretty easily. Now here's a question, Kura, because I know it is a mobile game. Is it very easy to recolor things, or do they make you pay for different like swatches and colors and things like that?
So basically, there's a token that you can earn through events, or even pick up in the in-game shop with in-game currency, of course. It's basically
Scumbag behavior.
Well, it's not like you can... Well, let me clarify on that one. It doesn't require actual money, per se. It's something that you use with in-game stuff. But basically, it's a chip that you can install on a particular part, and once it's installed on a part, it's basically there permanently. So anytime you use that part, you can recolor it basically anytime you please in the game, whatever kind of hue or color or fade or saturation that you're going for. Plus, the longer you participate, you can pick up these chips really easy. They literally hand these things out like candy with half these events, so it's not hard to pick up a whole bunch of them as you go. But yes, the color is just one form of expression. Something else I would like to touch on with the customization of the parts as well is the ability of customization of the parts itself, like modifying a part to look slightly different or giving it a custom paint scheme, which isn't necessarily as expressed in the games, unfortunately, because they have to work with a set system. With Medarot S, they actually have implemented a handful of alt skins, like cosmetic skins, so they kind of touched on it a little bit. But one thing I would honestly imagine if we had Medarots in the world today is, sure, you would have, say, 1,000 different Metabes that are available commercially that people would buy, but I guarantee you that this would also inspire a whole new generation of garage kit bashing. So you would have 100 different Metabes side by side, but not one would look similar to the other.
I could imagine it ended up being like...
Like,
I could imagine it being like the custom controller industry, where it's like, obviously they're all the same shape, but you've got all these people doing lights and skins and whatnot, and different buttons.
I mean, you know,
and
just like having like Medabots with like street culture and like slapping like armor that has like graffiti on it or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's actually a skin that was given out for an anniversary for the mascot of the mobile game, Cross Messiah, and it basically was him actually covered in paint splotches, like he walked out of a Splatoon match. And it's something that you would probably see in real life too. If someone had that model and wanted to express, paint splotches all over the parts would probably be something you would see. So I really like not just the customization, but I would like to kind of theory craft too, that even if they buy a commercial model off the shelf, I wouldn't be shocked if they also started creating alternative variants, such as, say, using the hat from one if it came with a detachable cap or a helmet, and finding a way to fit it on another one as like an additional cosmetic.
Ah, there you go.
So, just a couple things there that'd be mentioning, but the customization was one of the biggest staple features of Medarot from the very beginning, is the ability to mix and match parts. And because of all the new designs that they consistently add, whether official or fan-made made into official, it's literally endless. You could literally hit randomize for a week straight and still not scratch the surface of all the different combinations you could make.
Unless somebody does the math and figure out how many exactly they are.
Well, if they do get that answer, please do keep me posted. I'm not going to do that math.
I'm not going to find anyone who does that.
But yes, that is the second element. The third and the most important, of course, is the metal, or the meta parts as we go forward. I'm going ahead of myself here. Parts are also, as they define through the classic RPG system, are also separated by skill types. So much like in traditional RPGs, you'd have your healers, your shooters, your trappers, and so on. With meta parts, it's the same thing. And typically, or at least in modern games, they have it classified down into a set of 7 different skills, as you see here. Shooting, melee, healing, support, defense, setup, and a rare one called special, which doesn't necessarily fit in any of the other 6 categories. So this also adds into the customization feature where, say, if you want your healer to have a little bit of aggression on their side, well, if you're able to fit it in the build, you could probably equip them with a melee or a shooting part, or even set them up with a defense part if you want to give them another role. So you're not locked to very specific archetypes that you'd see in most other RPGs.
When you
So
think
what's the
about
difference
it,
between support and setup?
So setup is a lot of like your passive aggression. So most like if you lay a shooting trap down that triggers when people use a shooting attack too
Right,
close
yeah.
to it.
For those
Or-
from the Game Boy games.
Exactly. Or a plant that would perhaps give an additional buff as long as it stays in effect. For instance,
Also, those insect ones that you find in like that one little like bug
Yes.
colony area where they like build up an attack that's super powerful. That's
Correct.
That's also set up.
correct. Crossfire set and release. The setting is indeed a setup skill. Where basically it has some kind of benefit to the team that's not necessarily as direct, but it's passive. Support, on the other hand, is more along the case of like your traditional buffers in your RPG party. Things that would say like attack boost or success boost to make your hits more likely to land, or change the compatibility of your legs on different terrains so you're not struggling on them as heavily. That's usually the role that that's designed for.
Okay, so one's kind
So
of
for
more
the legs,
directly
it's good.
interacting with your allies, and one's kind of putting things down that do things.
Correct.
Mm.
Yes. And basically, as you are able to put parts together and put different designs together, you kind of have to design the role based on what you're looking for. So a lot of models will usually come designed as a all-rounder or a specialty. So for instance, Metabee is of course a specialty with all shooting. But if you were to use, say, I don't know, I'll just think of one example, a Windclap, which is a Griffin type from Medarot Navi. He's an all-rounder, which has 3 different types of skills he can use at his disposal, which really changes up how he behaves in battle. The other really big thing that sets Medarots apart is, of course, their leg types, because there's more than one different type. It's not just bipedal across the board, but you also have 7 different kinds of leg types that you can customize, each of which having their own masteries on different terrains. Biped, multi-flight, aquatic, tank, float, and wheeled. So depending on which terrain you're fighting on, may often dictate what kind of leg you need to switch to in order to keep mastery over it, which will add another function back into the RPG mechanic.
This was always one of the coolest systems that the games had, was having this sort of difference between other RPG games.
100%.
Yeah, I loved it.
When you started explaining about the leg system, the one image that keeps appearing in my mind is that of Metabee with the squid legs.
And you're right. And you're right.
That was like one of the best episodes.
And it's
of
a
the
perfect example actually as to what I'm explaining here. Metabee realized if he sets foot in water that deep, he's gonna drown. So he had to equip a leg that would give him compatibility, or at least negate the ability of drowning, so that he could fight on an equal terrain and meet his opponent properly. So
Devotion.
yes. Now, something else to mention with the part specifically, and you did kind of see it in the preamble if you tuned into that prior to the stream going live, is the ability that some models have called meta change. This is a function that was first introduced in Medarot 3, with a whole new slew and wave of designs that could transform into alternative modes. And these modes would sometimes give them completely different skills and even new leg types that they could use to change up the game and even catch the opponent off guard to really keep the advantage on their side of the table. So let me go ahead and start that up here real quick for you guys to check out. This is from my friend Sizuma channel who did a lot of documentation on their side. And these are all models that were introduced in Medarot 9, well not introduced, but were present in Medarot 9, which was one of the more recent games for the 3DS. So a lot of designs like these, which were the Biriki robots, are relatively common, but a lot of them had some very elaborate animations as we go forward. And these are just a handful of models that could transform, by the way. This is most certainly not all of them. So I'm just going to kind of let this play.
The bipedal legs are very sick. They're very cool. They're very rad. But it seems like there's very little reason not to have the floaty legs or something like that.
Oh, wow, that's cute.
There's actually a handful of reasons that some leg types have advantages over others. For instance, float legs are actually really good on any terrain, but not necessarily as fast or as advanced. Whereas,
that one's cool. Whoa.
But as say, biped legs are good on mostly everything, but usually kind of range based on how good they are or what
Land
they're
Motor, my boy.
This is actually his
so cool.
upgrade Land Raider that was introduced in 9.
Well, these are robots from the skies at this point.
Yep.
I love.
Is
Holy
that a
crap!
roach?
I've always loved Land Motor.
Meta change. I like this.
Oh, that's so cute.
Oh, little dragon.
It's a dragon.
Oh my god.
These are so
Duck.
cool.
Quack.
Oh wow.
That's so ducky.
Oh, isn't this one called Ugly Duckling?
This one they're
Seen
showcasing.
that in the trading card
Oh.
game actually.
That's a Digimon.
So with these meta chains,
It's
presumably
pretty
you need
close.
to have all the parts of the same piece, right?
Very
Correct.
cool.
If you want to change, you have to use the whole set.
Cable. I keep thinking of a toy that can do this, like a transformer. I
Yeah,
want this
right.
in toys, please. Thank you very much.
Actually, some of
That
the
one
more
just
recent,
turned into a gun.
some of the more recent Kotobukiya models actually can transform.
They make
Ah,
quality
very cool.
models.
Yeah, just have like a bunch of like.
I
little
love
parts
the
that can just
flash
move
in this
around.
here. This just gives off like huge like anime super power form energy.
Helicopter with the
helicopter.
blue- That's so cute. What a clever.
I identify as an
This one's a fan design that was
Wait,
made
hey,
official,
yo.
by the way.
That's
Love to see it.
all. I like it. They got
Lightsaber.
good taste.
That's really cute.
Oh wow.
That'll be roll out.
Is it absurd as it is in the show? I need to make a new show of this. I will
Oh,
watch
this
it so bad.
Archbeetle. We love Archbeetle, even if he's got goofy feet.
Red. I love this one. I'm biased.
Nice, nice. Little railgun there.
This was
Ah,
another
the
fan
club.
design, Kaimangar. Oni gargoyle
could-
type.
I adore it. Oh, he got the funny faced mask.
Oh, that's very cool.
A little bit.
Good show.
I love how I don't think I know how I know.
Cool.
what-
Oh, so cool. That one's got the colors of Mega Man X, Mega Man Battle Network. The blue and
Oh,
red.
yeah,
and
One
white.
kind of looks a bit like Gradius.
Yeah, one of them looked like Radius, kind of. A little
I want-
submarine.
If I were to have like a collaboration of something like this, it would be like Namco because they could use
Yeah.
like their Galaga spaceship or something like that.
Hmm.
Oh, I know this one. What's that called? Jet something?
Lady Jet.
Why something?
And this is her upgrade, Lady Raptor. Also introduced in 9.
Oh, I
I thought
love
it
it.
was Femjet is the U.S. name, right?
Correct.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
I'm thinking of making art on my VTuber transforming into like a little go-kart or a little plane now for some dumb reason.
So, Kura, what would you say is the most outrageous transformation that you've seen?
Oh boy, there's a lot of them, especially with the more modern
That's
games.
a bullet train.
That's a
Look at that.
train. That's great.
It's straight up a train. I thought it was like still transforming.
There's a lot of very unique
That's it?
designs, so
Well,
it's hard to.
reminds me of what's that anime Shinka Lion?
These
We're
are
just gonna
straight
ram right
up-
into the other
these
Medabots.
are straight up
Full speed
Transformers.
ahead.
Yep, basically. Honestly, First Ace here would probably be one of the weirder ones because all she does is just shed the armor. But there's
That's
again,
the final.
there's a lot of designs that are rather unorthodox in their transformations. So it's hard to really
See, this
pick
one's a
just
tricky
one.
Cool.
But yeah, these are just some examples, obviously, of designs that could transform into alternative modes. And it's been a core mechanic, I should say, since Medarot 3. So it's been around for quite some time. And it was also very heavily explored, in a lot of the newer games as well. And even in Medarot S, when they brought a lot of these models back or introduced new ones, they found new ways that they could break the mold with additional forms or different ways they could take it or transform them, or even give a lot of life to older models that had never seen 3D before, to kind of give them a new take. So very
so it's not
exciting.
just a gimmick then. That's an established part of the
Correct.
of the gameplay now,
Correct. And much like Helmchan said earlier, in order to transform like this, you have to use the entire set. You can't mix parts, unfortunately. So if you do end up having to play pure sets, or you decide to play purist like that, that is a function that you have available to you if the set is able to do it. Otherwise, it kind of ties into question: do you want to use the pure set or do you want to mix? Because there's benefits to both now.
Yeah, depends on the meta.
Mm.
Correct.
Honestly,
Meta.
it's always gonna depend on the meta. The meta of the meta.
Yep.
Oh,
Now,
man.
the final element that was introduced, that's the core element, is of course the metals. These are the heart and soul of the Medarot, which basically is what involved with making it tick. If you take the metal out of the body, all you're going to have there is a body that just simply does not move. So as I kind of go through here real quick as well, Sane, if you'd like to read that one off for me.
My turn. The metal. The brain and the soul of the Medarot. Culmination of research stemming all the way back to 1938. Metals can have proficiency in 3 skill types and 3 elect types. And those are natures come in 6 types: power, speed, hunter, sniper, guard, assist, as medallia can alter, and metals masteries, or even natures.
Now,
Nature.
a lot of these mechanics, such as with the natures and the medallia, aren't necessarily touched on in a lot of early games, but let me just kind of explain a little bit of the personality between these. These natures can also basically translate one-to-one into personalities, and each of these natures has different preferences. In battle, it usually translates in ways like, I like targeting these parts specifically, like parts that are like really bulky or really slow, or I like targeting ones that are really fast, or I have very specific passives on how I like to fight while I'm on the field. And I'm more than certain that in a real-life situation, natures would probably also have a little bit of a dictation on personality. So for instance, a power nature might even possibly be very aggressive or kind of short-tempered, or a hunter or a sniper nature might be a little more reserved or laid back. What do you guys think about that possibility?
Well, I think in the series we see that play out. There's one episode that I recall where Cyan Dog has some incompatible metal type that makes him act a little funky, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and that actually ties in the other point here with the proficiencies. Now, in early games, proficiencies were kind of something different, and it wasn't until Medarot DS that they kind of re-evaluated and changed a lot of the early rules. But basically, those masteries kind of tie into the meta parts slide that I mentioned earlier, with the shooting, support, and so on. So, based on what metal you pick, it's already going to kind of give you an idea of what parts that it's naturally good at. Now, in early games, you could kind of train you could train metals in stuff they weren't compatible in, you just wouldn't get certain passives. But in newer games, this wasn't necessarily something that was considered, because a lot of Medarotters don't really like to kind of break the mold with that to a point, unless they can find ways, of course, to kind of cheat it or even train in and out of it. Same can be said for leg types. So if you give a metal that's not very good in biped legs instead of 2 legs, they're probably not going to know how to use them very well. Or if you give a biped mastery a set of bolty legs, they're probably going to be looking at those extra legs going, what do I do with all these? I can imagine that would lead to a bunch of very fun arguments while you're setting them up.
That brings up another anime point, where again going back to that same Medabi episode where he didn't know how to use his legs right away until he was a little bit more trained to do so.
Exactly. And your example, by the way, on Cyan Dog is another perfect example. It was trained with a mastery in melee, but he was completely equipped with shooting. So of course he has a bad shot because he doesn't know what he's doing. He could probably give you a good right hook up close, but he probably wouldn't know how to use that rifle built onto his arm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that piece from the anime that was Cyan Dog is better at shooting, but the owner just give it rifle butts.
Exactly.
And make do with what you got.
Exactly, yes. And it even shows in the anime, best redemption arc ever, that Cyan Dog actually does learn how to use his rifle parts eventually as as the series progresses. So good on Cyan Dog there. He learned eventually and overcame his own weaknesses.
One of my favorites. Good for Cyan. Can we give a big round of applause for Cyan Dog, everybody? Give it up in the chats. Well done. Good job.
Now, the other thing to mention as well that I said here is Medallia. This was another mechanic that was introduced in 3, but basically there's small little gems that you can fit on slots in the metal, as you see by that little dark yellow indentation there at the top. Basically, what these did was allow them the ability to use extra skills or have mastery in different skills, or even just a little stat boost in what they're good at. So you could equip a specific medallia on, say, a Kabuto medal, which is that power nature one on the top right there, or top left, I should say, and give it a medallia that gives it mastery in melee. So now, even though the medal itself is innately good at only shooting, now it can use melee parts with no problems whatsoever, as long as it has that medallia equipped, which gave you a whole nother facet of the customization option that you would see in a traditional RPG game.
Very cool.
So you So even just between parts and metals alone, you have a million different ways that you could customize and build roles in your team based around what you're trying to look for, much like you would other RPGs, much like a lot of you guys have said earlier, how it converted into other experiences and other games that you play. as you played stuff and continued on stuff on your own channels. So it's honestly really nice how it all ties back into this. But moving forward here, another really big element of the series that was touched on is the Metaphorce. I'm sure you guys probably know that name very well with what it does. The Metaphorce specifically is a very mysterious power because it was something previously unknown that they didn't even know metals could do, and primarily the older ones that were fossilized and clean and preserved. But it manifested in a lot of very different ways, and in the anime, I'm pretty sure you guys probably know these two frames very well, with a sudden burst of power when pushed into a corner. Metabi with an ultra shot, and Rokusho with a bisecting slash. So these are, of course, very iconic frames, and another very big staple as to what the series was introduced with, starting actually with Medarot 2. So this mechanic has also been around for a very long minute. But Helm-chan, how about you go ahead and read that one off read this frame off.
Certainly. Mysterious power not actively understood. Theoretically only present in rare medals are notably different from commercial cloned medals. Metaphors can manifest as a powerful attack, a team boost, or a power-up.
Now the thing with Metaphor specifically, just touching on that point as well, this is kind of alluded to in the anime, and this is the only reason I'm bringing it up, between commercial metals and preserved metals. Now, back with the archaeology boom, when they started discovering more of these worldwide, of course they can't use these things straight out of the ground, because they've been in the ground buried for so long, they're half decayed. So, obviously they're not going to be very functional. But they're good for research. So what they would do is take a lot of these older metals and study them, and try to find ways that they can translate and clone them onto a commercial, ready-to-go design. The cloned ones. And these are often implemented with what's known as the 3 laws of Medarots that Miss Kata alluded to when I asked her. Whereas the original metals that they found that were in really good, immaculate condition in the anime are called rare metals. The rare metals specifically are usually the ones that were only capable of tapping into this mysterious power, which is why almost nobody knows what it is or how it works, because they've only seen the experience a handful of times.
Makes sense.
So,
I always remember thinking about it as kind of like Medabot limit break. Is that a fair assessment?
that basically is, if you want to go ahead and read that last one there, Helm-chan.
Metaphorce puts the user under extreme physical stress.
That's exactly what it does. So,
Ew, gross.
So to explain this here, the extreme stress, it is kind of alluded to in the anime as well, where Metabi was basically beaten into a corner before he could actually tap into it. It's a second wind, so to speak. But the way it's portrayed in other sources, such as the manga, where they can really deep dive into it, you have to remember that these bodies aren't organic or not designed to take a lot of high energy or high stress. When they start creaking and wearing out from extreme beatings, they're going to start breaking or showing signs of wear. This poor stone mirror here actually is one such example, where she exerted so much stress trying to induce the Metaphorce, her own armor started melting.
Ooh.
So all these bubbles you see on her armor is actually the NFRP actually bubbling from the internal heat melting.
And Medabots got allergies.
Yeah, basically. Right. And I'm going to touch on this particular frame a little farther down the line, because it actually ties into a rather interesting and some rather grim outlook and understanding as to what actually comes with such extreme power that's being tapped into, and even trying to figure out what it is or how to tap into it. This poor stone mirror here was actually just one such experiment that went not necessarily wrong, but you could probably put it under I wouldn't be shocked if it actually would be in modern world today, but like Medarots have rights kind of thing, or like prevent Medarot abuse kind of thing. This is kind of what this poor stone mirror was the victim of. And like I said, I will touch into this just a little farther down the line as we continue forward. But the other really big element that ties into it is, of course, we have the parts, the metals, and the tin pit that goes into the robot, but how are you going to communicate with them when you're actually in battle, or even when you guys are away from each other? That is the Medarot, which is basically the culmination of either the watch, or in more recent titles, the phone, as an actual app you can install.
That is an unfortunate sounding transliteration.
So Toad, if you'd like to go ahead and read this one off for me.
The Medarot. The Medarotter's tool of choice. Store your partner's metal and communicate with them. Manage parts, inventory, equip parts, or ammunition remotely.
Now, in the original, the watch actually has been a staple of the series since the very beginnings, and you've seen it in the anime in different frames as well, being able to remotely communicate or even teleport parts or your whole model there on the field at pretty much a moment's notice. But when the series was resurrected and picked back up in 2010 and onward, the watch wasn't necessarily as portrayed as the only source of being able to communicate with your Medarot in battle, and they actually extended to the ability of phone apps where you can manage it remotely all the same, and even have an extra slot you could use on your phone as like part of a case, so you could keep the medal with you at any given time.
But do some old-fashioned Medarotters still use the watch?
You see them very commonly, actually. A lot of the older ones,
Okay.
even when Ikki is fully grown up in Medarot DS, I believe he's still portrayed as using the watch properly, whereas Azuma in Medarot DS is actually using a phone.
Ah.
What a hipster.
So I'd say ultimately
Sorry,
they
but
would,
I do like
Oh my
that
God.
cute generational difference, though. I like it.
I'd like to
exactly.
retract my earlier statement, though. I think handheld teleportation device is definitely some pretty out there technology.
Oh, 100%.
sure.
And that's what I was kind of alluding to only earlier as well with the ability of like teleporting Medarots remotely. Obviously, we don't have this technology here now, but maybe with the development of Medarots, we might have, and we could have been able to do that very commonly.
Thanks, aliens.
Yes, yes, exactly. Aliens.
It kind of
aliens
does
were good
go
at
with,
marketing
like,
toys, honestly.
transportation.
Now, this is actually another really big piece I had a chance to speak with. So now to give a little history behind Mr. Tagro, and we kind of talked about this briefly as I was leading up to this presentation specifically. But Mr.
You
Tagro,
were very excited.
Oh, I was absolutely excited because I didn't think he'd answer me, but he responded like 2 minutes after I sent the initial message, so I think I just got lucky. But
yeah, it was that one. Very
But to
cool.
explain Mr. Tagro briefly, he has been with the series for a pretty large amount of time. He was responsible for a handful of designs between Medarots 4 and 5, and then he explained to me he had not actually been actively involved for about 20 years. It wasn't until Medarot S came out when he was contacted and asked to design successor models to some of the original designs that he first created. But he's also been very intimately involved with it since, and stayed very much so up to date with it as a support role, as well as official artist when they need. In fact, Mr. Tagro is actually considered one of the big four artists for Medarots as far as the community is concerned. The other three in particular are named Tiyuga and Marukata, and a third one, which some of you may or may not know the name of Fujioka Kenki. Does that name sound familiar to anybody, or not sure?
No.
Not at all, I don't think.
I'm not
Okay.
very good with names, I'll be honest.
Yeah, me neither.
Okay.
I haven't noticed any of these
Actually,
names.
So to
I'm
explain,
searching for Tagra, and sorry, I'm searching for these people. I'm just amazed at how much research you did and who you got to connect with. This is amazing.
Me too. I'm honestly amazed. But to explain Mr. Kenki briefly, he's also actually had a role in a lot of staple mecha. One of which was Gundam Seed as a designer. So he's a very big name that's seen around, and he's also been involved with Medarots as a designer. And a lot of his designs are absolute balls out of the park with how amazing they are and how well designed and how well built they are. Unfortunately, I was not able to get any answers from Mr. Kenki when I tried reaching out. But I was very fortunate to get an answer here from Mr. Tagro. Helm-chan, if you'd like to go ahead and read this one off for me. When I asked Mr. Tagro the same question of what is Medarots from his perspective as an artist.
Certainly. As for the pure question of what is Medarot, I believe that Medarot is a game system that holds a lot of potential and is a powerful IP with more than 25 years of accumulation. I believe that new developments can be expected in the future.
This is coming from one of the artists himself who's been involved, and one thing I really liked about Mr. Tagro as I follow his stuff is whenever he does release a new design, he also makes this great big long Twitter thread on kind of his thoughts on the design as he was putting it together. So like things that he researched when it comes to putting it together, different concepts he experimented with. So it goes to show that he took it very seriously when he was creating a lot of these original designs that could be used in the series as official models. For the second bit here, Vector, would you like to read that off for us?
We love to read things. So, as per Tagro, as a designer, I place great importance on the charm of the lack of refinement of the design. And I think we can see this when you compare his Medabot designs and his sort of character designs as well. The basic design of Medabot, which was originated by Mr. Horomarin, has a lack of refinement in a good sense. And I interpret this as the backbone of the project. I feel there is a unique hook to it. I think I resonate with this, whereas I also tend to enjoy the very early designs as well, where they're more bulky, a little more blocky, a little more simplified.
It's like I said earlier with a lot of the early designs that were designed by Horomarin. They're very simple, very easy designs, not overly complex. That's what Mr. Tagro's talking about here.
You definitely want robots that kids are going to be able to draw fan art of.
That actually was one of the reasons Mr. Horomarin mentioned why they're so simplistic is they're easier to draw.
Continuing on, however, and this is his personal opinion here, and the other this approach and the other designers who are currently working on Medarot S, the present mobile game, are creating smart and updated designs. That is also very important for Medarot to not become outdated. So talking about some of those designs, like I've seen the key art for the events and what have you, a lot of the crossover stuff like that, superfluous like horns and details and greeblies and what have you. That spikies, that sort of thing. I mean, they end up looking, just kind of end up looking more like super deformed versions of like Digimon or Gundam or something. To say nothing of the fact that there are actual crossovers with stuff like Digimon, but yeah, that's what I look at them and I say. It's like, I'm not sure it's quite the same Medarot that I grew up with.
I feel the same. I'm glad I'm not the only one. I do kind of like the more simplified designs from the other games.
Well, it's like you see it a lot more like. It's like you see it a lot of.
It feels more nostalgic to me.
Exactly. It's like you hear commonly a lot is less is more, and that was one of the really big founding principles of the early designs. Is something that got the point across as to what it was inspired by, but not something that completely redefined the wheel, so to speak, with all these different ways to translate it.
I think it was very easy to look at early designs and be like, that's Medabi, that's Peppercat, that's Rokusho, Sumilodon, etc., etc. They all had very distinct looks, whereas you start introducing more and more and more, it becomes less obvious who is who anymore. You lose that sort of distinct silhouette behind every design, that sort of thing.
But they're still pretty, and they still appeal to other people and people outside the demographic.
Correct.
This is my guilty pleasure, honestly. You mentioned when keep, and that's when I designed my first VTuber design. I thought of like, hey, less is more sometimes, and simple designs, and I love it. When I saw the picture and I searched for Tagoro-chan, I realized that they made one of the, I'm saying this with carefully, penny on stocking garter belt like covers, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's this person.
Honestly,
one of the pictures that I like the most.
Being completely honest, that kind of threw a lot of us off guard when that was brought to our attention. When that was brought to our attention, the Medarots server, they said, "Today I learned Tagoro Chang worked on the Panty and Stocking manga." We're like, "Wait, what?" And I went and researched it ourselves, and we're like, "Oh, so we did. What do you know?"
I shared that with my friend. I was like, "Holy crap, dude! You gotta look at this."
But
it seems like a lot of his character work has ill-defined feet, so that kind of tracks.
Now, one thing I like to point out, too, about Mr. Tagro's statement is what he said as well with a lot of smart and updated designs. So what I can appreciate is he also acknowledges, while the less is more lack of refinement is definitely a staple feature of the series, it's also important to keep it updated and fresh, because if you use a lot of old-fashioned stuff, it's not really going to appeal to a lot of people. So a lot of fancy or even complex designs are also important to find that nice little sweet spot of balance.
You know, I'm sure that's more important in the 3D space, like in the mobile game and what have you.
100%.
There's definitely a different design philosophy between making Medabots for 3D versus making them for animation or for manga.
100%, absolutely. And I really liked that when I asked Mr. Tagro this question, he made it very specifically blatant that he covered this moment, that he covered this particular point. Because it was a very important part as an artist to consider, because you're in charge of putting a face to these designs, so you don't want to reinvent the wheel, but you also want to be creative with it, which I really appreciated when I got a chance to speak with Mr. Tagro. But as we kind of step along here, the next major point is, what can they do? We've talked about what are they and what exactly goes into designing a Medarot, or what comprises it. So now the ultimate question of the night is, what can they do? Like, it's kind of obvious that they're designed for fighting or anything else, but combat isn't necessarily the only function that Medarots actually have while they're on the field. It's just one of the most common. And to define here row battling, which is an iconic definition in the series, basically it is a battle agreed upon by two combatants, so very similarly to a friendly spar in a lot of cases. Row battles also come in two types, between submission and exhibition. You may have heard in the anime when Mr. Referee calls out, "I declare this a submission row battle." Basically, the way to explain the rules is a submission row battle, as defined by Mr. Referee, is the loser must submit one part to the winner as their trophy for winning for keeps. So this is a more serious kind of match here, so where if you end up losing, you have to forfeit something you used in battle to present to the winner as their reward for conquering you. Exhibitions, on the other hand, are more along the lines of your free matches, so whether you win or lose is not really a big deal, just along the case of just making sure both combatants have a lot of fun, which is, of course, the most important function of them all.
Just a friendly sparring match, if you will.
Exactly, and victory conditions are, of course, very simple. If you can force the enemy Medarot into submission or shutdown, you, of course, are declared the winner. This can be either having them outwardly declare submission, I yield, I'm done, I can't fight anymore, you have me in a corner, or you force their head part into shutdown. Now, this kind of ties back into parts briefly, where if a part reaches 0 HP or it takes too much damage, it will shut down. And at least the way the anime portrays it is, it becomes dead weight, or if the leg breaks, you can't use it, obviously. But the head part specifically is the most important, and the one piece you want to make sure stays the healthiest. Because if that part shuts down, you're done. It's game over no matter what. So that one's the most important here to keep in mind. And, of course, the most iconic rule and function and behavior of any row battle that everyone knows and loves is that they are also seen and officiated by referees to ensure sportsmanship and rules are maintained. Everyone knows our dear friend Mr. Referee incredibly well. He's seen basically anywhere, no matter where you find him. Anywhere there's a row battle.
Nobody gets hurt.
Well, not just that. He also will appear basically from anywhere. You call row
I love
battle.
Mr. Referee.
He will appear from the trash can. He will come in on a paraglider. He'll pop in from the fountain next to you. He could be anywhere. If there's a referee, he's going to ensure the rules are upheld. That is his job and his mantra. But what if I told you that his particular mantra, his behavior, his personality was all inspired by someone else of a relatively similar character trait? I'm going to give you guys a chance to kind of take a wild guess here.
I can feel
Somebody
it's
else
a
with a
very
very
old
strong
celebrity.
mustache?
A lot of his design, both physically and his personality, actually were both inspired by this.
Beady the
Someone like
live,
boxing?
big mustache.
I remember that my brother and I used to talk about this, about how the Medarot referee somehow resembles the Dragon Ball referee a lot. Is that why?
Very good guess, but that actually is not the one that was directly
that's-
stated.
Because
The one-
A Japanese personality?
The one very specifically mentioned, Stalker from G Gundam.
Oh my gosh!
G Gundam.
Sorry, I should have got this. I was watching G Gundam yesterday.
The
It was-
bow tie, even.
It was discovered
would've
in
guessed this.
there was a passing interview that was found where they state very clearly, as they were designing the early characters, Mr. Referee, or his official name is Mr. Uruchi, was actually very heavily inspired by G Gundam's Stalker, with his very bright, very go-getter personality as a referee or even a narrator, was very defining as to what brought Mr. Referee to life and what made his character so memorable. Is the ability to oversee row battles, but also make it very exciting for both the combatants and the and both the viewers.
I just want a crossover of these two guys just hanging out and just getting interrupted with one of them needing to run off to officiate something.
You know what? I wouldn't be shocked. I 100%
No
wouldn't be
rest
shocked.
for Mr. Referee.
Exactly, but that man knows how to do his job. Let's be real.
They should
That is a
show where
man
they
that
just talk about like his backstory and what he does
day
when
in the
he's
life.
not doing. Yeah,
That'd be
day
a
in the
really-
life. Just like they should have done that.
Yeah.
that would be
I
a
can
really
imagine like a fan game
That
where
would
you
be
play
a-
as Mr. Referee have to run to the battle in time.
Actually, Helm, I'll do you one better. I'd like to see a whole OVA based around Mr. Referee. Just a day in the life of Mr. Referee. Just how often he has to travel to and from, or how quickly.
often and what he's doing in between.
Exactly. And it actually is kind of touched on in the in the series, because he is seen doing everyday stuff, but also in the manga, they do kind of periodically run into him. So obviously he lives a normal life too, but he also does love his job very much. So it is always great to see that, but also interesting to see where they got the inspiration for it as well.
I could imagine running into Mr. Referee, like, day to day, is like that weird feeling when you run into a teacher or a co-worker when you're at the grocery store and you just don't recognize them for a moment.
You know what? I wouldn't be shocked if that was the case.
His voice is in my head all the time. His English voice, like, I can't take it off now.
You're welcome, by the way. But yes, as we move forward, as we move forward to that, there are also different types of row battles that are portrayed through the series. Toad, you mentioned that you absolutely love that even the modern games really stuck to this traditional realm with their mechanics and the row battle. But the first of which is typically known as relay race, or directly translated, it also is known as shuffle run. Basically, the combatants navigate from a command line, which is on their respective sides of the field, and they run to the center where they initiate their order. When they complete their order, they turn around and run back to start to receive their next command before they can do anything else. And basically this will repeat back to back as a 3v3 playing style, as very iconic through the series. And essentially, you just have to flush out the enemy leader to ensure victory. Now, in older games, the leader almost always was the topmost slot, so it made it very easy to figure out who is the leader as long as you kept in touch with whoever was in top slot. But in more modern games, they actually took that mechanic out and made it to where they implemented something called Silent Leader, where you didn't know who the leader was until you actually damaged their head part.
I'm gasping. That's so cool.
So it was a
question.
That's actually a cool feature.
Now, that was the first one specific, and this is the most iconic combat mechanic that was done through the series, and it stayed a staple through the entirety of its history. So basically, it does about 80-90% of all Medarot games you can literally pick up out of a hat to play. They're almost always going to play this style, which is also specifically why if people are looking to play the games, especially the Japanese ones, I will first ask them, have you played the original GBA that was localized? If they tell me yes, then I can tell them, then you already have a general idea of how to play, because they're very largely similar. So if you guys decided you wanted to try...
It's such an unusual concept, though.
It is.
Like, even amongst other sort of priority command-based combat systems. Like, they could have just done something like a bar along the bottom or top that shows changing priority as you choose your different attacks or something like that, but they still commit to this running back and forth sort of thing. Do you think that committing to this style of gameplay is one of the contributing factors to the lapsing interest that the games had in the West? Because I look at that and it's never really appealed to me, and I imagine that other players would find it bizarre.
I wouldn't be shocked actually if it was an argument. And it's a very valid one, absolutely, because much like you can talk about any different kind of genre of games, some people just don't like turn-based RPGs. It's just not a preference for them, and that's 100% fine. This has just been a very iconic style that they've stuck with.
I love them.
A, because it works, but also because it's a very easy to understand style. So, like, for instance, when you're running from the start line to the command line, that phase is called heat, or heating, as in you are heating up to use an attack, much like you would heat up when you were exercising. And when you initiate your attack and turn around to run back to start, that is called your cooldown. Much like, again, in exercising, when you don't just stop right away, you have to cool down so that before you can do something else. So your running back and forth is an endless cycle between heating and cooling. And then basically you'd have a lot of different moves or mechanics that would be relative to which phase you catch your opponent in order to maximize certain conditions or even damage bonuses. But it's been a very tried and true method. It's been around since the very first game, and of course refined through the years. But this has been the most consistent. And like I said, if you played the original GBA game, you could pick almost any early Game Boy game out of a hat and play the game relatively well with a translator, of course, and still understand a pretty solid idea of how to play. Which is why I also encourage a lot of people to try out Medarot S as well, because it plays with that exact same row battle mechanic. Now the second row battle style that's been used pretty frequently, and this one not necessarily as heavily, but still worth touching on, is third-person fighter, or action-based, as some people may call it. Now, with this, and specifically, this is where you take direct control of the Medarots in 2v2 matches, where you are actually in the fight itself, 1-to-1, and you are thrust straight into the action. So you have full cooldowns on your ammo, on how many times you can use an attack before it has to cool down and recharge again, but this gives you full control in the fight itself, which is also what made it very exciting. The most iconic games this was released with was Medarot Duel and Medarot Girls Mission on the 3DS. But as far back as Medabots Axe, you might remember it on the GBA, the 2D game, this is a relatively similar style, but 3D instead of 2D.
You think that affects the fiction at all, taking direct control over the Medabot rather than having this sort of separation between the player and the Medabot, and having that distance as sort of a command interface like we have in the relay stuff and things like that?
I would honestly say, kind of tying back to what you said earlier about sometimes RPG just isn't the poison for some people. Sometimes they like something a little more direct, and games like this might just be down their alley. And even leading up to the 3DS service shutdowns relatively recently, some of my Japanese friends would say they still actively held contests and tournaments for both Medarot Duel and Girls Mission, or even Medarot 9 as well. They were very active communities that were still playing these games, so they were still very well received and continued going. But like I said, the combat is real time. Most intense of the battle types because you are right there in the action. These also fight very specifically under a new rule called Domination, which basically meant you didn't win until the last enemy was finally put down. So,
sorry, I apologize for interrupting, but did I heard what you just said correctly? Medarot dwelling what?
With one more time?
Did I heard what you just said?
Oh,
Medarot dwelling what?
Okay,
Ghosts?
so... Oops, hold on. There we go. So basically, with the 3DS era, Imagineer released two games with this third-person fighter style. The first of which was Medarot Duel, which is actually where this screenshot is from. The other of which was called Medarot Girls Mission, which released about 3 or 4 months after Medarot 9 did in late 2015. Basically, it plays the exact same as Duel, but cleaned up. But what set that one apart was specifically it took a more visual novel approach instead of your traditional RPG-based system. So it was a little easier to play overall because it didn't focus too heavily on the story, and you could just kind of jump into the combat. Reception was a little mixed on the game overall, but if you enjoyed Duel, you could play GM relatively easily because they basically play the exact same thing 1-to-1.
Listen, if you're going to make it more like a visual novel, at least let me date my Medabot. Come on.
I mean, hey, there you go. Now, the third row battle.
There's a question. Has that happened in any of the series? Can you date a Medabot? Asking for a friend.
I wouldn't necessarily say 1-to-1, but I will say this. Most of the driving force of the antagonist in Medarot 5, if I understood the translation correctly, the entire driving force was she was trying to find a way to convert a human mind onto a metal, or an equivalent, so she could stay with her friend forever.
Fan
Not
fiction
hearing
in my
no.
head
What?
as a teenager of stuff like that. I always wanted to think about how cool it would be to have like an entire like Medabot series where a human soul is trapped inside a metal and put in a Medabot.
There's a handful of comics.
Sort of like
There's a handful of comics that kind of attempted to approach this, but unfortunately, because that was something that wasn't very actively explained or even elaborated on in the series in any capacity, it's kind of hard to tell. It's mostly just accepted headcanons more than anything else. But still a very exciting concept all the same. Now, moving along here, the last and the third type of combat that they used is tactical RPG. So if you guys played, say, familiar to Advance Wars, Fire Emblem, this might be something that might be down
talking my language.
Yes, sir!
This might be something down your alley. With this one specifically, this was also unfortunately only used once in the series as kind of a experiment. They kind of tried a whole brand new system, kind of alluding to what you said earlier vector on not necessarily appealing to, say, action RPG or turn-based RPG. This was kind of a new take that they were experimenting with at the time. Basically, instead of being...
Look at this. I'm just flabbergasted that they had the opportunity to set this on a hex grid, and they completely whiffed on that.
Well, I'd say they kind... Actually, they actually kind of did in 3 and 4, where they actually ran diagonal and then forwards and then back again. But that was more of a stylistic choice for those early games. For Navi, on the other hand, instead of most fights being traditionally 3v3, this one was instead 5v5, and you moved along a full tile grid as you saw here. Now, whenever your turn came around, and most of these might be relatively consistent of most other tactical RPG mechanics, when your turn came around, you were allotted a certain amount of action points, or AP. And with this action points, you were allowed to basically do anything within your limit. You could move and attack, you could only attack. It was all dependent on what you chose to do on your specific turn. Turns were also...
This literally just... Sorry to interrupt again, but isn't this literally just Super Robot Wars?
Exactly, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. If you're familiar with a lot of those early games, you might enjoy this one as well. And even when I played Navi years ago, and I didn't understand it because it's not translated, sadly, but it's still a relatively easy game to understand. And if you've played a lot of tactical RPGs, you could probably pick this one up just as seamlessly. But again, much like in those other type of games, player position is very heavily reliant for a lot of your skills or even what you do. So, say for instance, if you had someone that mastered in long range, of course, you don't want to be sitting right in front of your opponent's face because they're going to be out inside your range. So you have to back up or navigate yourself to where they stay within your little range of sight at all times. In the case of here with this screenshot here, this little circle of red you see is Windclap's area of attack that he can reach from, whereas all the blue spaces are places he can move to while he can still attack. So it was a very unique aspect, and again, very heavily reminiscent of any other tactical RPGs. But unfortunately, like I said, it's unfortunate it's only been used once, because if you ask most seasoned members of the Medarot community, they will usually tell you they'd like to see this have expounded upon even more so, because it was a very bold attempt and a very bold experiment that was a little rough around the edges, but still relatively successful overall. In fact, a good chunk of the designs that were included in Medarot Navi in its new roster were actually designed by Fujioka Kenki, which was his major claim to fame in the series.
Gosh, no, I want to see this. Like, as a fan of Advance Wars and Fire Emblem, my eyes lit up seeing that red and blue. I'm like,
Now, one thing I'm going to mention to you actually, and I actually completely forgot I did this with everything that's been going on this last year. But if you are interested in knowing more about Navi specifically, because it is a very big game and a very unique take, I actually did a retrospective over on a friend of mine's channel, Lord of the Losers, where he did a full playthrough from start to finish of Medarot Navi, where you could kind of learn and understand it and play it yourself. But if you want to go take a look on his channel for that retrospective in 2 parts, we did talk very heavily about Navi, such as, say, what made it really great, what were things that it struggled to realize, would it do really well if they remade it. But it's a very unique take and a game that's considered a fan favorite by a lot, even if it's just for the designs. I personally would like to see this style returned as well, because it is a very unique take. And of course, its soundtrack was an absolute banger as well, so definitely recommend even just for that reason alone. But these are the most common different kinds of row battle types that you'll see in the series. The traditional shuffle run is the most common of them, but tactical RPG is still one that you'll see pretty commonly. But as we move along, I also have to mention it's not pretty. Now, of course, we see pixels and animations on a screen of all these different attacks breaking things on opponents, but we don't really take a minute to imagine what exactly that looks like up close.
See, this is why we love illustrated media.
Yes, I had to really scour a lot of frames to find a lot of these.
It's kind of dark.
Now, just for instance, like with X-Size over here in the with the bottom left, he was hit with an acid shot specifically, so his armor is physically melting off his body with that. So it's not just an effect; it actually is physically melting.
Don't worry, they're just weird aliens.
Yeah, this is gonna be a flashback of the Pokemon manga.
Animated, man. Oh.
Yeah. Now, you guys remember that stone mirror I mentioned before on the Metaphorce panel? How she was put under extreme stress. This one over here on the far right is the same stone mirror. This was just
progressively more.
This was
down.
This was a few frames later. Now, to explain the story behind this specifically, which I was saving for this frame exclusively, the story behind that poor stone mirror is shortly after the Metaphorce was discovered to have been unleashed with Metabi in Medarot 2. It of course got on the radar of a lot of people that probably want to figure out how to use it for more selfish gains. And the main antagonist, Dr. Habareki, started experimenting with ways he could artificially induce Metaphorce onto commercial models that could not unleash it natively. So what he would do is basically put them under such extreme stress that their bodies would start melting, as you see here, trying to see if they could unleash it as a form of stress relief to let all that pressure out. This poor stone mirror unfortunately didn't have that opportunity. When Metsubi and the others found her, she was just kind of skulking about with no real rhyme or reason or where she was going. She would attack on sight very erratically and no real sense of self. And by this point, when Metsubi realized that this wasn't really another Medarot he was fighting, he actually put her out of her misery. Because there was no, in his words, there was no soul in those eyes. It became a brain-dead machine at that point that was running on pure adrenaline. So that was...
Oh no.
Kind of like a robot zombie.
Exactly. And that was basically the end of those frames as well, which is why I picked these particular pictures. But yeah, it goes to show that extreme stress not only physically damaged the body, but it was so extreme it also mentally broke them. And this particular frame was Metabi putting her out of her misery as a mercy.
Wow.
So
that's dark.
So the manga gets pretty dark, as you see here, but these are things that you'll never get to see as a Western fan, because it unfortunately was never localized.
So is that going to be cut in half in the top left?
Yes, so funny story about that one. That is, he basically ate a blast at point blank range, and Hikaru actually lost Metal Beetle for a very good amount of time in the later end of the Hikaru saga because of this, where he actually did have to try to find a way to contact or find the early contact that actually left them behind to begin with, and explain what happened. So it's a very intricate series overall, but much like it is with, say, Pokemon or Digimon mangas or light novels that don't go into detail over just how messy it can be up close. It's just so interesting to see what row battles would look like at this level and this in this first-person perspective.
Can I say something real quick? Somebody's saying, what happened to the parts that they're gonna get to the winner? There are no parts. This thing is melted.
There's no
I mean, at that point,
No
at that point, they probably just pick the one that's the least amount of damage, and they'll take that one. But I guess it depends on the
okay.
damage.
I'll pass.
That's about it.
Like, you know
Give me
what?
That's going to be quite a mental edge, though. Like, you take the melted part, you use that in your next battle while it's still all melted. Imagine the intimidation factor.
That's very
true.
true.
I mean,
Very
there are
extreme.
that is definitely a possibility. There is actually an entire model that you face in 9 that actually is designed based off of a garbage heap. His name is Dustmaster, Beast Duster. And he's basically Beastmaster, Robo Emperor, as he's known in the anime, where
How can you remember all of this? Oh my god, you are such a brainiac.
I've broken down every last one of them. I know these quite well. But
Guys, I think Kura might really like Medabots.
You just
No.
gave him the
Is
actually.
the descendant
No.
of Dr. Aki.
I mean,
But,
I know we are about to be lectured by Kura and Medabots, but now I'm sitting here thinking, man, I don't know any of this.
well, that was my goal, and that's why I wanted to keep you guys as blind as possible with this
Actually?
presentation, is to blow all you guys' minds with the stuff I've
At
researched.
first, I don't know any of this, and then I'm like, what do you mean by you talk to the creators?
Exactly.
Honestly,
that's a brain process.
being completely honest, I'm still shocked that they replied to me, and Miss Kano was an absolute sweetheart about it. She was super nice when she explained it. Even gave me a link to a blog interview that she did years ago when she was working on 2, that I still have a link to. I'll get that to you guys if you'd like to see it later. But and then like I said with Mr. Tagro, I probably got lucky when I caught him, because I sent the message, ran it through Depot like 3 or 4 times just to make sure it wasn't like misconstrued or mistranslated. Sent it to him, and then like 5 minutes later I check it again, he replied back. So I replied, so I asked him the question. So I asked the question, and I put it out front. I said, as an artist, what is Medarot to you? And he was so considerate about it too, because he actually sent me his answer in English.
Oh, wow.
So
That's
I was
kindling their
nice.
spirits, honestly.
So I
think
was
you're kindling.
I was super impressed and super thankful that they reached out to me. I tried reaching
Very
out to
cool.
Tiyuga to see if I could get a more consistent answer from him as one of the more consistent Medarot artists, but unfortunately I never had a chance to hear back from him in time. So I still have plenty of gold. I still have plenty of gold shavings here I can still share and present with as it is.
Good stuff,
Wow.
honestly.
Yeah.
Now, this is going to be the big question of the night. Everyone that's seen Medarot and
gosh.
wonders, where has it
Here we
been?
go.
Because this is this
In
this
your
is-
YouTube channel, definitely.
This is
Yeah.
this is the question
Kura-
of the night.
Kura has
It's here all
single-handedly held
found
the
the
Medabots
weapons.
franchise together.
Well, I like to think I am anyway, but I still have to credit sources wherever I can, and I very consistently keep things going toward the official channel as well. In all my coverage videos, I always link back to the main video that week as well, so they can find so they can find the information there from the source. But I just keep doing what I can because I realize one day nobody's doing this. So I figure if no one's doing it, if I don't do it, nobody will. So that's what kind of started my YouTube channel nearly 4 years ago.
Found a mission and stuck with it.
So yes, this is the big question of the night: is where has it been? This is something that you'll see asked very constantly with a lot of different with a lot of people that wonder when they see it. So the first I'm going to mention here, of course, is a timeline I put together a good number of years ago, actually, kind of documenting all the different games they've released from
They have how
1997
many games?
onwards.
You know,
Yes.
very straightforward.
This is a timeline I put together back in this was about 2021, I think, when I put this together, documenting all the games that they released from 1997 with the original Medarot
Okay.
1 all the way up to the current with Medarot S Unlimited Nova and still ongoing. So as you see, they've got a pretty solid repertoire here in their experience with different games.
Hmm.
So
They-
while
they
we're
put
on
it
this
on-
timeline, because this
They
is
put it on the
perfect time to
Switch
ask-
though.
They did actually with Medarot Classics Plus, and that game
I
is
mentioned
a
earlier.
that is a compilation of the first 5 Medarot games, alongside I think it's Medarot G, Navi, and Core. So you have basically almost the entire classic collection on there that you can play, leading all the way up to Medarot DS in 2010.
Bless the
But
Switch,
it
honestly.
has an unfortunate history in development. I don't know if
Huh?
Kura is going to mention that later.
I am actually. This is another one of the big
I'll leave
questions as
that
to
to
where
you.
it's been. But I just want to take a minute and kind of showcase here the timeline here of just how many different games that they've created through the years and how consistent they've been. Now, it did
So
kind of...
while we're sorry.
No, go ahead,
So
sorry.
while we're on this screen, 'cause this is the perfect time to ask this. So with all these games here, if you were going to recommend one game, just that you would say is generically the best one to start the series with, which one would you say is the best one to start from?
So now I have to ask, are you worried about it being in English, or do you not really care?
Let's say, if the answer changes, let's say give me both.
Okay, so, and I'm going to include the fan translations in here as part of my arguments, but I would honestly include, let me see. I have to say, if you've played the GBA game, then you're already off to a very solid start, but I would very earnestly and fervently recommend that you play Medarot 3 with the English translation being complete, because based on all the people that have play tested that and seen the story to the end, especially here among Western fans that can now experience the story for the first time, every last one of them have said it is one of the best Medarot games I've ever played. I loved the story from start to finish. Now that we can officially understand the story and learn what happened as the continuation of the Iki saga.
And that's a Game Boy Color game?
It
Does it
is.
seem here? Okay, cool.
The first 5 were Game Boy Color games. Now,
Okay. And now,
there-
what if we aren't worried about the language? Or would
Now-
that change the answer?
not necessarily. Medarot 3 is still very solid. I would say 9 would also be a really good place to start, because albeit the story was a little disjointed according to my Japanese friends, the gameplay itself, they say, is a very well-rounded game. And like I said, they were holding tournaments for it very consistently, all the way on up to Nintendo shutting down the 3DS servers. Like, I would see very consistently on my Twitter feeds people hosting for tweeting about an upcoming Medarot 9 contest that's incoming.
Okay.
Very cool.
And of course, I would also say Medarot S if you're able to get it working. Couple of backdoors you have to work around with getting a Japanese Google account set up for it, because they did kind of change how they set it up. But if you are able to get it running, I would honestly actively encourage that one as well, because it is the most up-to-date with models, new and old, and staying up-to-date with stuff in general. On the topic of Medarot S, though, I do have to show this off as well. They've been very busy in 5 years.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, yeah?
We've seen so many of these already.
Wow.
Medarot S has been incredibly busy these last nearly 5 years, making friends in some incredibly high places with collaborations. As you see here, Ghost in the Shell, the Digimon one actually just recently ended and is getting ready to close here pretty soon.
Okay.
We're in the middle of a Gridman Universe rerun, that's a great example. We've seen Shaman King, Evangelion, Full Metal Panic, Zoids, Transformers, Rockman X,
Yeah.
Go Nagai with Mazinger Z and Mazen Kaiser, or the Getters.
You showed me this in our collab, and that was the most impressive thing about this. Like, hey, this is where it's been. Like,
Now-
it's been on all over these places.
I'm so
Am
in
I
love with the
tripping,
freaking
or is
Battle
that
Network
Cyber
designs.
Kuro-chan?
Yes.
That is indeed Kuro-chan Gold. That you are 100% correct. Now, this is of course excluding reruns because I only caught the most recent of each. But yes, these are literally all the collabs that the series has seen for Medarot S in 5 years, including
So
reruns.
Cool.
So they've been incredibly busy, and it's very obvious this series is far from dead that people thought it is.
No, when I saw this, I was like, dang, they have this needs money. And
Oh,
it's
Yes,
like
it's
they
us.
have
Why are we
it.
not funding this?
100%, and that's what we've been trying to do with the Western community, with even just talking about it too and sharing stuff about it.
It's
Even
so
on the
difficult.
even on the Facebook community that I manage as well, which is quite shockingly over 40,000 members now. I didn't think it would get that high.
Nice.
we still-
40,000?
I kid you
Oh,
not.
hold on.
Oh, hey yo.
So
Pause the
I'm,
break.
That's
I'm a
lot of
Facebook user.
people. Holy crap.
I'll send
I'm
you
not
guys
Facebook
I'll send
user.
you guys a link to it later when we go offline. But yeah, that series has grown tremendously, and I'm shocked how big that community has grown. But I always actively try to advocate for the mobile game as well, not just for the collaboration, but also keeping the Western community involved. And that was another reason I founded my channel, is to update and talk about this and keep people in the know. The collaborations, even though it's a really big selling point, of course, it's not the big thing of Medarot itself. It's just different friends that that they've made with through the years. And I'll even go as far as to say that if Medarots existed in real life, I wouldn't be shocked if we actually saw a lot of these models, like a limited run or limited edition thing that people could use. Like, I wouldn't be
Well, if
shocked.
it's coming out of Japan, absolutely.
Like I
Absolutely.
wouldn't be shocked if if I was fighting somebody in a tournament and suddenly they pulled out Mazinger Z or Shin Getter, and I'm like, wait, who's that? And I'm like, oh yeah, it was a limited edition back from like 3 or 4 years ago, that they only sold a handful of. Or in the case of like what Gold said with Kuro-chan, that was a limited run. Especially as another fellow 90s anime that aired roughly about the same time and took off the same time it did. So as
It's
you
all
see-
fun and games until someone destroys your Meta B. A little 8-year-old comes up with SpongeBob.
You know what? You know what? I wouldn't be shocked. I would not be surprised.
SpongeBots.
SpongeBob collaborations are literally everywhere, right? So
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Or
Ugh.
TMNT. It's either that or TMNT.
Now, I do have to say here, we've seen a lot of mechas mentioned through here, of course. Transformers, with Zoids, with Nadasiko, with Go Nagai. Now, I'm sure the other big question you guys are asking is Gundam when? And the answer I'm going to give you is we don't know. We'd love to see it, we've talked about it, it is literally the only one we're missing before we can complete the trifecta of mecha. And for some reason, they just haven't released it yet.
I wonder if it's maybe a rights issue, because I know that, well, at least as far as I'm aware, Kotobukiya do the Medabots kits, but obviously Bandai do Gundam, so it's kind of conflict of interest. Maybe that's an issue.
I wouldn't be shocked. It was definitely a very solid argument, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's the argument. But a friend of mine actually joked around because after seeing just how many different series they've touched with, Bang Bravern, Shaman King, Evangelion, Transformers, Zoids, and so on. And a friend of mine mentioned, it's kind of funny that Medarot did in nearly 5 years what Super Robot Wars spent doing in like 30 games. So it's just amazing the reach that they've had. Like we think they blow they blow our socks off with one collaboration they release. Like I said, the Digimon collaboration is actually just getting ready to end, and that they've been begging for that one to be rerun since 2021. But and actually something to mention on that one, because I do see a comment here in my chat on the Digimon collab specifically, and then I'll move forward. That collaboration actually was quite massive, because when they first revealed it, they revealed it on April Fools, I think of 2020, as a artist collaboration, where Tayuga would draw Omnimon as a Medarot design, and one of Digimon's artists would draw Medarots in a Digimon style design, which became Omedamon. And they wrote it off as just an artist collaboration, nothing more. So we thought it was really exciting, and then just kind of fell off because, they said there's nothing big with it. And then exactly 1 year to the day, April Fool's 2021, bam! Omega Knight drops alongside Grey Wars and Garuru Metal as an event reward. 1 year to the day. And it drove the world by storm. Now, something to mention specifically is that collaboration was so successful on the Digimon side of the ring, and I did mention this as well in our group chat, that Omedamon became canon to Digimon lore.
Whoa!
Yeah,
that's
cool.
Imagine
I
having
actually have the device that they put him on, the Digimon Vital Bracelet. They released it was basically a sort of V-Pet where you use these little SIM cards to load your Digimon onto it. They did a Medabots crossover for that, where you can have Medaby on there. And as far as I know, it was like the only official device where you can actually get Omedamon on it.
Yep, exactly.
Well, let's be fair. The Digimon fans are just as starved for good content as the Medabot fans are. So it's no wonder.
I'm as a Digimon fan, I'm gonna say we're actually way luckier. We are not this starved, and I'm so sorry that we are
Digimon
eating better than you are.
Sleuth,
That's
Digimon
fair.
Modern movies. Oh my god.
Yeah, we are definitely eating better, but that is a crying shame that we are eating better.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a thought in my brain, and I don't want to be crucified by the entire community and also by everyone single member here in chat, but I kind of want to do my Sane has a hot take moment when I look at this image.
Oh,
because
it was the hot take.
So the thing is that there's this all these collabs, all these amazing artwork going on here. When I look at it from a scope of a distance, from let's say from like half of my room away, I look at these images, I recognize every brand in there, and I recognize the art style of the Medarots as well. But it's so hard to also call it apart because it's almost a dying breed. But I think that mecha fans are kind of sleeping on this. I feel like there's been an aesthetic I feel like more people borrow from the aesthetic of this franchise in general than promote it itself. And I'm like, you have been taking so much from this when you create your own like characters and everything without giving it proper appreciation, because I feel like this is like one of the main sources.
Now that actually has been a pretty solid argument in the Medarot S community that I've been managing for the last several years, and every time they announce a collab, it does come up again. That actually is a very, very valid take, because they're getting kind of tired of seeing collaborations, is what they're seeing, because there's so many that you see here, and don't get me wrong, they're all fantastic, but it doesn't give Medarot the chance to shine on its own because they're shining in someone else's spotlight, and it's a very valid argument. But the only argument that really I can use to assuage those points is mostly because they've been using S as kind of like a moneymaker. So they kind of have to partner with other people where they can, just to kind of keep the revenue flowing. And for a series that's been very largely in the dark for so many years, I think I'm willing to cut them some slack on it to a point, because they do kind of need it. Especially because they have shut down their studios in the last couple of years with Delta Arts and Rocket Company and absorbed them back into Imagineer. So they're trying to keep the revenue going to keep the series alive. So I'm willing to give them a little bit of slack on there. My personal argument would be just kind of dial back on a little bit of Imagineer, because going one collab into rerunning another is kind of a bit much on people's Ruby stocks. Give us a break already. We kind of need it. Especially so close to Medarot Day, just around the corner, too. We need a break. But I will.
That's
There's
perfect,
actually
like-
one license I'm surprised they haven't collabed with.
Yeah, I see a
I'm
lot of the
surprised-
aesthetic. That's what I meant. Sorry.
I was gonna say, I'm surprised they haven't done one with Nier Automata. It seems like 2B will show up to the opening of an envelope. I'm surprised they didn't get her in this.
I wouldn't
Kind
be
of like
surprised.
I would also be surprised. Yu-Gi-Oh. Yu-Gi-Oh seems like one that.
Oh yeah, you get
That's
right for this.
that's been a massive one. People
Blue
have been
eyes,
imagining
white
for a while.
dragon Metabot form or something like that. Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
very,
We
very
could
easy.
definitely sell something like that.
Very, very
It's like-
easily. I would, I definitely could see it as a possibility. Like I said, we've been wondering when they're gonna have a Gundam collab, and half of us joke around they can't close the game until they do, because we have to finish it somehow. Now, I do want to
Yeah.
mention something else specifically on this particular side before I go forward. I did mention I did the retrospective on Lottle's channel for Medarot Navi. If you guys would like to take a look at that, I'll give you guys links later. But I did also host a retrospective with a Proto Dude, if you guys are aware of who he is, for the Rockman X collaboration down in the bottom left corner. Now, for those that are unaware, Proto Dude is one of the biggest names on Twitter currently for Rockman or Rockman X content or news, kind of like what I do with Medarot. So when a new model kit comes out, new toy or new series or new game,
wait. I think I've heard of this guy. Hold on.
yeah, Proto Dude. I was able to have him on my channel as a guest host a number of months ago when we did as a retrospective.
Yes, I know this guy. Oh my gosh, I love his Mega Man news. That's so cool.
Yep, I had him as a special guest as a retrospective toward the end of the Rockman X collaboration, and we talked about just kind of how well they translated the designs from Rockman X into Medarot, and even as far as like the story content and everything. So very nice to have that too. I would have loved to do that with a lot of these other collaborations, but was sadly not able to get a hold of any resident experts in each of those categories. So unfortunately, that was the only real retrospective I was able to host on it, currently, anyway. But, no, the collaborations have been honestly fantastic from start to finish. Honestly, it's amazing the different names that they've been able to touch base with. As you see here, Evangelion is a massive one. Go Nagai, specifically, Mazinger Z and Mazen Kaiser, the Shin Getters, Devilman. Those are some of like the OGs. Like if we didn't have those, we wouldn't have half the Super Robos that we have today, or even half the mechanics or features that they would have introduced. Gold, I'm pretty sure you probably agree with me on that one, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Like they were foundational. Like for instance, Mazinger Z was the founder of the Rocket Punch.
Yep. I think after Mazinger Z, there's probably like a variation of Rocket Punches. I could go on, but I don't want to take up the time for a stream, so...
Right. But that's what I'm saying, though. It's amazing that they had such big names in here that they were able to collaborate with. And it's knocked our socks off with a good chunk of these, and even bringing some of them back now and then has been amazing. So Medarot has indeed been very busy over these last 5 years with Medarot S, and using it as kind of a revenue, but still using it as a way to gauge a lot of interest. And even in previous shareholder meetings that friends share results of in other years, they have documented a rather large spike of engagement in Western audiences. So it's very obvious that they know we're here and we're supporting them. The only question is, when are they going to release us something? But that also leads to a point that Toad was going to talk about earlier. That's going to be the next big thing, is the trademark dispute. Now, Now this could honestly be an entire subject unto itself with just how messy it is and what exactly was involved. So I'm going to kind of give you guys the TLDR of this argument, because it is a massive, and I mean truly massive, bombshell with everything that was going on. But the long story short to this is, back in 2017, when the trademark for Medabots in the EU, it's spelled with a B, expired from Nelvana, someone in Spain picked up the trademark and basically held on to it for about 3 years, doing nothing with it. When Medarot S released in 2020 on mobile, and within its first 6 months actually was quite popular, he suddenly slapped the EU courts with a suit that says it's too similar to a game I've been designing and I want it taken down. So, unfortunately, this guy kind of did everything wrong in how to actually go about a court case or a trademark dispute. And what happened was the courts awarded him the judgment because there was no one present at the court to argue and dispute it. So people noticed people kind of noticed and wondered what exactly happened, because one day they actually saw Medarot S on the app stores, even if they couldn't install it, and then suddenly it's gone the next day, and people started asking, we started digging around and find out, yeah, because the courts ruled that it was, they ruled in his favor, and the app stores were forced to take it down. Now, here's the bombshell with it, though. The guy didn't actually bother telling Imagineer he was suing them, either. So they weren't even aware of this entire situation going on until the courts had brought it to their attention. And they're like, wait a minute, what exactly was that? Can you run it by me one more time? And they did. So they started speaking with the EU courts and found out, yeah, we were sued and not even told we were. So they argue with the courts, and they open the case back up for dispute, now that both sides are properly brought to attention. And this goes back and forth for about 3 years, between 2020 and 2023. And through this time, this trademark scammer is trying to design a game using the name Medabots as a way to shoehorn an NFT crypto game he was trying to release. And needless to say, he thought he could try to ride on the coattails and the fame of the original name of Medabots, because, as it's rather obvious, it's a very well-beloved name and franchise. Needless to say, it did not fly very well, and any kind of criticism or concern was met with instant ban or shutdown in their own communities. And given that it was also the NFT and crypto community, it was pretty easy to do that, even if you were being genuine. But finally, in 2023, the courts finally announced that after looking at it again, they'd stripped the original judgment because obviously he didn't do it correctly. And let's kind of go through here real quick. Yeah. So they ruled in favor of Imagineer in 2023 and said, okay, so obviously this guy has been trying to use the name and shoehorning off of the original IP and fame and notoriety of the original Medabots name. So he's doing it. He's already done everything wrong. He's already being looked at in bad faith because he never told the opposing party he was suing them and did it all incorrectly. And the courts awarded Imagineer the trademark back, or order of the trademark back in 2023. So what we're hoping for, and what's been kind of going on these last couple of years, is just kind of waiting on the courts to officially settle everything and basically force the trademark back in Imagineer's hands. Now, what they have also done in the meantime, when they made this announcement, is also tie it with the US trademark of Medabots, because you have to file a patent in different countries. So basically, when Imagineer gets the EU trademark for Medabots back, they will basically own Medabots and Medarot worldwide, as they should. So this basically ties in the possibility that if they do choose to release something, globally, or even just release something in general, they'll have access to both the names. So if you guys,
I'm sorry, I was throwing up in my bucket for a second.
So if you guys were wondering why we've not seen any Medarot content the last 4 or 5 years especially, this is kind of it right here.
The timing is so unfortunate. Exactly.
Correct. Now,
did you mention the? You didn't mention it, but what I was mentioning earlier was the one with the Switch game. There was some sort of small controversy with that.
So that one in particular was mostly because of the use of emulation on the classic devices, because they found out that a lot of the classic games or hardware that runs classic games, is like classic collections, was running on an emulator that was hand-coded from a group of uninvolved individuals, but also did not credit them. This I believe was later fixed after it started making rounds. So they went back and they went back and modified it and took care of that. But yes, that was also a notable concern for a while, because it did kind of tie in the whole issue of Nintendo in particular, but also in a lot of other cases, developers using emulators despite being so vehemently against them. But like I said, I believe that issue was settled and covered relatively quickly. Like within a couple months, I think that one was taken care of. I've not heard anything else about it since. But,
I just wanted to mention it so people were aware it happened.
No, but you are absolutely correct. Yes, that also was a big one. But yeah, this primarily here is the big reason why we've not seen anything in the last 5-something years. And as of about late 2023, going into 2024, all the names here for Medabots with this funky name that really it doesn't own anymore have been changed to MyBots, which I believe is still is still available on some stores. Obviously, nobody's installing it for very obvious reasons, but they forced the name change, and based on what I've been hearing from people touching base with it, they've been very largely silent in any updates regarding the game, quote unquote, that they release. So no updates,
It's on the Google Play
patches.
Store. I literally just look right now. It's on the Google Play Store right now.
Correct,
Please,
but
give
any
it a negative rating right now.
But any correspondence, such as like with patch updates or player concerns or anything like that, based on screenshots that I've seen, they are not responding basically to anything. And I think they're kind of hoping they're just going to ice them out and just kind of let this thing fade out on its own. Like I said, I could very easily make this a whole discussion on itself, but that could easily go another 3-4 hours, and I'm not going to do that to you guys.
Stay tuned for the next discussion, you guys, when Kura is going to be doing a deep dive into my bots. Playing it on stream and showing it off.
I'm actually planning to do a retrospective on the lawsuit because I've actually been in contact with a guy that stayed very close and up to date with the information, even spoken with some of the lawyers about it on what's been going on, and even providing info that he's seen. But
Honestly, cool stuff.
That's kind of in development still. I've not heard back from my friend in a while, but when we do officially do that retrospective, hopefully toward the very end when it's all over, done, and dealt with, it'll be something that we can talk about in more detail. But
let's hope that they actually put having the trademark back in control. Let's hope they actually put that to good use, because
correct.
It doesn't necessarily guarantee that we get anything over here, does it?
Correct, but it does mean that if they want to, they'll have the ability to do so, which is what they really want.
Yeah, and that gives us a little bit of hope.
Correct.
Absolutely. I'm just hopeful that we get something, because I, as a Gundam fan, years ago, we got no Gundam media for ages, and I'm very sure. My tinfoil hat theory is they released one game on the PS3 that was really bad. It bombed, and they went, well, I guess the West just doesn't like Gundam. And I'm really hoping that they get the message, we want Medabots. Give us Medabots. You've got the trademark. Give it to us. We will give you money.
Right. Now, I'm checking in my chat periodically as well, and someone mentioned, to be fair, the creator that made the NFT game, it only has the names right, not the franchise copyright. Yes, so to clarify on that as well, because it is a very big argument and question as well, he only bought the trademark, the name, Medabots, Medabots, in the EU. So that's all he owned. But what really pissed off a lot of people is the fact he was claiming he bought the IP and that he owns it all the way, which obviously he doesn't. But he was being very misleading with that on purpose to try to draw people in. But again, this should hopefully be well past done and settled in the next year, hopefully. And we never have to deal with this again, because Imagineer will fully own the names to Medabots and Medarot completely. So if they do decide they want to release something, they are more than welcome to. And even if they choose not to, because the Switch is not region locked like the 3DS was, there's nothing stopping you from buying a physical copy of the game and playing it that way. So if you guys decide that you want to play the, Medarot Classics collection as an example, there's nothing stopping you from ordering one off of, say, like Amazon.jp, and picking it up on your Switch to play.
Sane just found your Google Play review on
Your
on
1-star
Cybox.
review.
Oh yeah, I'm actually shocked they still have that on there, because they actually were trying to remove them at one point when they were really trying to push for the game.
No, you can't keep this guy down. Scam project run by a scam artist that defrauded his community of hundreds of thousands and doesn't pay his devs. Stay very clear of this app, studio, and person. Bad news in all caps.
Yep, exactly, and I stand by those.
Oh, yeah.
I stand by those because it actually was proven that he was not paying his devs, and apparently he's getting in a lot of trouble with that too. But like I said,
I just love how I think we all know at this point that Kura has been very patient with just everybody he talks to, including to all of us. And then you see this review and you see him use some very aggressive language. My gosh, God damn.
First time I see it. You're like the sweetest person I met, and it's like, dang.
And he left that review on Christmas, it says.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, what?
I honestly forgot I left that half the time because I forgot all about it at the time.
2023 Christmas.
But yes,
year.
like I said, this could be a whole discussion unto itself. But I'm gonna save you guys for that, because we are still kind of running pretty long. So I am gonna go ahead and I am gonna go ahead and keep us moving forward. So
So you woke up Christmas morning and you decided to throw hands, basically.
I mean, in my defense, the defense of a lot of other people, when they realized that this was the sole reason we've not seen anything in the last 5-something years, I think people had a right to be upset.
Yeah.
True.
Given the Christmas gift of, hey, we want our franchise back.
Yeah, exactly. But as we kind of lead into the tail end of our presentation here, now the other big question of the night is, where can I watch or play Medarot? Now we obviously know what it is, what comprises it, what can you do, and of course the big question of where it's been all these years. But now, now that you're got all that gusto for it and you really want to start playing it now, what can you do? Well, obviously, you can also go watch the anime. It's currently on Retro Crush. You can go see it basically anytime. There's also most streaming services that play it.
Yep.
You can also buy.
Oh yeah, it's on Amazon Prime too. So you have a Prime subscription.
Retro Crush took me.
You can
Retro
also
Crush
purchase.
saved me from a lot of stuff.
You can also purchase physical copies of both the original series and Damashi on Discotech. So if you'd like physical copies to play in a player, you can do that as well. But this has also been, much like it was with a lot of you guys, basically the introduction into the series. So if you guys want to go back and relive it again, do a watch along and have some fun, this is a great opportunity to do so because, well, it's on most streaming platforms pretty consistently.
A good primer, if you will.
Exactly. Now, the other big place you can mention, of course, is fan translations, and I've alluded to this pretty heavily through the course of this presentation so far. Medarot 1 and Medarot 3 are currently 100% completely translated into EN with working patches. Now, granted, we can't just give you ROMs, so you have to go find those yourself, and I'm not going to make that whole topic on emulation, but we do have the patches. They are fully working.
on ground.
Yes, but we also have access to a fully working EN patch of Medarot R, which was the only game they released on the PlayStation 1. Now, this game plays weirdly at first glance, but it also plays in the same shuffle run relay race style as the older games, just with a little bit of a different spin on it. But if you'd like to play something with a few more polygons outside of Game Boy graphics, that definitely is a possibility. And with Medarot 9, both Medarot R and Medarot 9 were done by third parties unaffiliated with Project Rising Beetle. But the Medarot 9 translation is about... what was it? I think I last checked. I think it's about half done. Whereas the battle mechanics are fully translated into English, and according to forum posts that I've been led to, the developers have like no Discord presence, but they've been still active on GBA temp with stuff there. And theoretically, they are working on the story for it. So that one is question mark translated, I'm gonna say. But the other three in particular, 1, 3, and R are indeed fully translated into English. So if you guys decide that you want to play any of those on a stream in English and not have to worry about language barriers, I can absolutely hit you guys up with the English patches for those, no problem.
Gotcha. Noted.
Now, the other thing to mention, of course, with the fan translations is the manga itself. I did mention this as well, with a handful of it being already translated. But when they officially announced at the end of the Reloaded Sai, when they posted the final chapter, the Mr. Unohei, who's a producer, also known as Producer-san on the official channel, had one of the authors with him in an interview as well on the official channel, talking about the end of Medarot Reloaded Sai, and mentioned that all the volumes are available for digital purchase. So you guys can go ahead and pick those up, no problem. Won't be translated obviously, but you can. And pretty much have the entirety of the whole story of Reloaded Sai and the adventure of Kagami and Metabi. Like I said, with the original Medarot manga, a handful of chapters were translated for a while, but the first couple chapters have been officially retranslated properly, and based on what I was reading, they are going to start doing that more consistently going forward until they catch up with where it was before. So we will finally have a handful of the manga that will be finally translated at long last as well. But even then, if you still want to collect it for the sake of collecting it, you can still pick up the volumes pretty consistently. One thing to mention as well about the Reloaded Sai manga is, like I said earlier, it did feature a lot of fan-made designs that were not made in-house but by fans. I'm going to give you a perfect example of this one. The on the bottom row, the one on the center right, the red KBT type, that one is named Musha Beetle. He is a fan design by a friend of mine that actually won in that contest for a new KBT type. And he chose to go with an Oriental Samurai armor for that design. It was used it was used as a new body for Mechabi in the Reloaded Psy manga, and his counterpart, which is an electronic cyber-futuristic stag beetle type named Kairen, is also present on the volume next to it, the blue one. So both of those are fan designs. Both of those are fan designs that were made 100% official.
That's so neat.
That's something.
So it's
Kind of reminds me of how they did the same thing with Mega Man, where they would start doing that with a couple of the Robot Masters.
Yep. So it's really nice that they've also remained relatively consistent with their community as well. So they're able to keep them involved even without, well, still keeping their own thing going, but also keep things fresh with new designs and new art looks. Looking at my
3 looks like me. What the hell?
let me see. Looking at my comment here, Iron Clark says Musha Beetle and Kairen are very scarlet and violet coded. I mean, okay, oh boy, oh here we go again. They played. Okay, so funny story. So they released Musha Beetle and Kairen and Medarot S roughly about the end last year of 2023, and when I released that particular coverage and I titled that episode, I named it Past and Future. Obviously because, you know, you have an Oriental-style samurai beetle and a futuristic cyber stag. So I'm like, okay, cool, that's kind of neat. And then after I post the episode, about an hour after it goes out, someone says, hey, look, it's Medarot Scarlet and Violet. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm still mad to this day that they caught me on that joke and I never capitalized on it. I'm still salty about it.
That's wild.
So, yeah, they caught me on that one. But no, it's very wonderful designs, very creative. But again, shows that they stay involved with the community as well with periodic contests. And even if there isn't a contest going, if you look up the tag for Orimeta on Twitter, you'll find a bunch of creative designs that people come up with that have never been made official that obviously should be. But again, these are just some examples of manga that have been translated or are available for digital purchase. But moving forward, there is also the physical merch. We have made allusions to this in previous discussion as well. The Kotobukiya model kits that you can buy that are 1/6 scale, the OCG, TCG for the cards. So lots of places you can pick up a lot of physical merch as well. And there's also the Chokado 1/12 toys that they released a while ago.
The ones that we know.
Yes. Now here's a question. Why isn't there a vibrant and involved and enthusiastic community of Medarot fans making this scale model with like 3D printed parts or something like that?
Actually, they do.
Oh
actually.
gosh!
If you look up on Twitter every now and then, there's actually I'm downplaying this, an extremely active 3D printing community that actually takes a lot of these models, like the 1/12 Chokado toys that you see here, and they actually will model and 3D print in scale with the joint pieces that they used as custom parts, and they can sometimes sell them as garage kits at Wonderfest. The only reason that we don't see them, of course, is because of Japanese laws with a lot of trademarks and copyright. And
We don't want
Wonderfest
to promote it too much.
not necessarily don't want to promote it, but more it's a very specific window that creators are allowed to sell specific IPs or names and not get in trouble for doing so, because copyright works very differently in Japan, obviously. So we can see all these things on Twitter and say, oh, I will happily buy this off of you, or I'd really like a garage kit of, say, Peppercat as a perfect example. But you won't see it physically for sale because it was only sold at Wonderfest, because it's the only time that creator was allowed to sell it. So, unfortunately, if you don't go to Wonderfest, or you don't have a proxy that goes there for you and work all that out, you can't buy anything from there.
So you can't you'll never find anyone selling these on like Etsy or something like that.
Correct. Now, every once in a while, and this is actually where I got one of mine years ago, there is a site called Mandaraki, which sometimes will sell garage kits from like past events, based on what I understand. But you kind of have to be willing to fetch a pretty penny to collect those.
Unfortunate.
But yes, there is a lot of physical merch. There's a lot of 3D print communities with the custom designs as well, and you'll see them all over Twitter as well if you're in the right circles. So I highly encourage you take a look there and do some digging. You'll find some really creative stuff.
I'm gonna do a deep dive.
deep dive. I this is what I meant earlier. I've been wanting to like say this again in like a better way, in a way that sounds respectful to the series, because I love these designs and I'm pretty sure that everybody loves these designs. There's a lot of inspiration in the art community and in mecha communities and in figurines, Gunpla and everything that comes from the original, source of designs like these back in the past and still today very strong. However, I feel like this franchise is one that everybody loves, so nobody wants to commit to date. It's like we're borrowing so much from it, but I'm never giving it like the acknowledgement that it kind of deserves.
No, I
It's a weird
100%
take.
agree. Now, there actually was supposed to be a third volume of the Chokado toys that was to be released, and it was going to feature all female models, such as Fancy Gale.
Oh.
But
It
fortunately,
has so much potential.
that's
Cute robots.
that's
It's like kawaii robots coming from this. It's like there's a lot of cuteness in this. It's coming.
Well,
It's
the
an
thing about
art.
that one is we kind of don't even know what happened to it. Like, they hyped it up saying it was a thing they were doing, and then they just kind of stopped talking about it. And then, like, every now and then you'll see a tweet with a screenshot of that original post and says, hey, did you guys forget about these? Because we're still wondering where they're at. So... So you'll see them every once in a while, but no, you'll usually see that comped with a lot of the 3D printing community, like I mentioned earlier. So, but highly recommend, definitely recommend looking into deep diving that, because I mean 3D printing itself, there's a whole discussion on that too, and we're gonna go ahead and keep from that discussion because that's a whole nother can of worms. But
Honestly, if they ever did reboot the series in the West, I hope that this is the first thing that we see is these little figures being brought back.
I wouldn't be shocked because actually they announced earlier, I think it was last week or the week before, they were Kotobukiya was actually rerunning the original Metabi and Rokusho kits, but within like an hour of that post going live, they sold out.
Oh man.
I mean,
Understandable.
you can still
But
find...
that's good to know that they would want to release them though. Maybe
Now-
they'll take that knowledge and be like, hey, people want these, we'll make more.
Now, you can actually find them in other places like Amazon JP and even on eBay relatively easily. You'll have to kind of do your research on just to make sure you don't like overspend on one and not spend like $100 on it. But
Or get something fake or bootleg.
so far, I've actually not seen a lot of issue with that too much. But again, you just kind of have to check on the pricing and just kind of see what you're able to swing. Generally, I've seen if you can stay under about $60 for the model kit, you're usually pretty solid. That's based on my research and what I found anyway. But yeah, you have physical merch, you have the downloads for the mangas, you have the anime, but you can also support the official channels as well, where they've been very actively posting all this content. Now, these three lovely ladies here are actually known as very exclusively as Metatubers. These are very specialized Medarot designs that actually stream on the official Medarot channel periodically. The one on the far...
I must meet them immediately.
The first one on the far left, and I was hoping they would have released her V3 form before this video, but unfortunately they didn't. The one on the far left is named Shushupop, a steampunk garage band vocalist that does a lot of radio podcasts very frequently on the official Medarot channel. The Steampunk Sweetie is very well beloved for a lot of reasons, and honestly, I really like her V2 design. I'm hoping that her V3 is just as creative, but easily my favorite. And Shushupop actually was the very first Metatuber that was released. So she's been around the longest and doing this for a while. The one in the center is Leah, who is a Learjet schoolgirl type. She does a lot of song covers every now and then, but also does some video game playthroughs on the official channel every now and then. Sometimes she will post on the or be as like a guest host with Mr. Unohei on the official channel for weekly coverage, but that's usually every now and then. And the last one over here is Cheerful Bunny, who is a bunny pop idol type that does a lot of game streams as well, relatively similar to Leah, but also does a lot of cooking streams every now and then. She'll do like a hand cam cooking stream every now and then on the official channel when she's able to stream. So it's
Are
very
they limited to playing only Medarot games, or do they play other games like relevant stuff that's out at the time?
They played other stuff now and then. It's not super common that they do, but every now and then they do. I think they played a horror game once a couple of years. Shushupop in particular played a horror game once a while ago, back in like 2022, late 23, I think, and and had Leah with her as they kind of co-opted, commentated it. So they play stuff every now and then, but if you subscribe to the official channel, most of the non-Medarot stuff you'll see will be about a daily or like every other day radio podcast from Shushupop. But
I tried looking for Cheerful Bunny, and you were the first thing that appeared. It was like,
Gosh,
Yeah.
you are just so deeply rooted.
Where
in
is
this
the
world.
guy in this
well, because
You
I'm
are-
the only one that's
Right.
covered all of these in detail.
yeah, you're good. I was trying looking for the
You're doing
VTuber, and you
such a
appear
good
first.
service.
Well,
You
like I
know,
said,
but
someone's
had-
someone's had to cover it.
Yes.
Another
Yeah,
question. Have they? I haven't checked them in a while. Have they, or are they moving towards live 2D models for these characters?
They actually already have live 2D models. That Shushu Pop
Okay,
was
cool.
the
Because I haven't seen them in a while.
Now, you kind of have to dig around for them on the official channel, but yes, they actually have working live 2D models that they use when they stream. Even with their early forms, with Shushu Pop and Shushu Pop 2, Leah Lila with Leah 2 and 3, Cheerful Bunny with Bunny 2 and 3 as well. So they basically make a new live 2D model every time they have a brand new version. And I think Cheerful Bunny was the most recent one to get her V3 model for her birthday. Shushu Pops is a little late, and I don't really know why they're keeping it so long, but they also ran the Digimon collaboration through it, so they probably just didn't have the opportunity to. But no, they keep these girls very involved with the channel, and they are very, very sweetly loved by the community. I don't think I've seen anyone try to stir up any drama or any hate toward any of these three ladies,
Aw.
because everyone's
Very
remained
nice.
very respectful to them when they stream, and we all love our we all love our Metatuber girls. So highly recommend giving them a look when you get a chance as well. They will periodically stream on the official channel.
I would also like to add that they are also very welcoming to foreign fans, because one day after talking with Kura about the Medatubers, I decided to check one of them. I think it was Cheerful Bunny who happened to be streaming Medarot Navy playthrough at
Yep.
that time.
Yep.
Right? All I did was say hello, on my VTuber account. That's all I did. And apparently they got super excited over a foreign personality coming over, and they're like, "Oh, hello," including the audience also when calling Cheerful Bunny as Miss
Aww.
Worldwide and all of that. I'm like, okay.
Oh no, we absolutely love our girls like that, and we treat them very nicely. And like I said, at least based on what I've seen, nobody's tried stirring up any drama or any kind of like hate raids or anything like you'd see with most other VTubers. They stayed
No.
very. It's been kind of like a benefit and a detriment, but they've been very sheltered by the official channel, and that's been very good because it can let them do their own things. And not have to worry about being involved with a lot of drama that goes in circles. So it's been very good that they've taken good care of them.
It's for a very good reason, thankfully.
100% correct. But they take very good care of they take very good care of their girls, and we love them so much for that. But you can follow them and support the official channels, the Medarot channel, both on Twitter and on YouTube. I did put the link, the handles here for anyone that wants to go check them out. But that is basically where I get my information from as well. So whenever I go live on Tuesdays with my coverage, with weekly stuff from Medarot S, the breakdowns, any other news that's incoming, that's the first place that I go to get the news and all the highlights before I translate it into English for any Western Medarot S players that want to stay involved. So I've remained very involved with it, again because no one else does. And I've just been doing it for so long now; it's just kind of normal. So, I've been enjoying it. I've been enjoying it. It's always been great. It's always been great being able to do this.
Yeah,
Oh,
like
yeah.
earlier when you mentioned about the Orimeda tag on Twitter, right? When you said that you are very involved in this, the first thing I saw in the latest tab for the Orimeda is also your stuff. So,
Yeah, I've been on a little bit of a drawing binge, so you'll probably see a lot of my stuff as the mostly recent. But whenever they host an official contest, they will actually you'll see that you'll see that tag flooded.
Wait, does that mean that the design you wanted me to do the color to recommend the colors for us in our DMs is also an Orimeda?
100%. I had an idea for that design, and I was looking for some feedback on how to kind of refine it. So, yes, there will be a lot of custom designs that you see, and when they host contests, like I said, the Orimeda tag will be absolutely flooded. But so many creative designs. And on the topic of Orimedas, we actually are currently hosting one in the Project Rise and Beetle Discord server that is closing in about 3 days. Right now, we are hosting with a dominant theme of a role-playing game, the RPG. So we've been seeing a lot of really creative designs there based around thieves, mimics, beholders, mages. In fact, one of the most recent ones on there actually was a reference to Don Quixote. So that one was pretty well received with its very creative with its very creative approach. And it just goes to show that, again, people have lots of original and creative ideas. So even if they stop creating completely brand new ones and they rely purely on fan designs for, say, a year, they'd have virtually endless material. But yeah, they've stayed very involved. They've tried to do what they can to keep involved with the series. Every now and then, Mr. Unohei will also do some live stream of Medarot S on the channel, as well as an unarchived stream. So if you're lucky, you might possibly catch him on there as well. Every now and then. But yeah, this is kind of the overall series as a whole. So that kind of takes us to the very tail end here. So I'm gonna go ahead and open the floor now. And kind of like I said earlier to a handful of you before we went live, if there's any questions that I have not answered through the course of this presentation, I want you guys to call me out on it.
Members of chat, if you got questions, definitely spool them up, line them up, let us know.
Yep.
I can't think of anything that Kura didn't cover tonight in exceptional detail.
Well, like I said, I tried to be very prepared for this.
I have a more unconventional question that probably wouldn't have gotten up. What even with like the whole alien stuff involved, why does a metal have a soul and a personality in it? Like, what caused it to have some sort of like sentience?
It's kind of
Is that
weird.
ever explained?
It's really weird because it's alluded to, but it's not, and it kind of ties back to what I said with like the anime, the games, and the manga being different interpretations. Like in the anime, they portray that the ancient Medarots were an ancient civilization known as the Mandalorians, and these rare metals were actually well preserved, that they still had some of their early memories from that time that were suppressed. And the commercial metals that are cloned don't have these. They're blank slates. So it's hard to tell that what exactly the series behind it is, like why exactly are they sentient, or what exactly brought that sentience on. My personal opinion on it, and this is just me headcanoning it mostly, as far as like the cloned metals are concerned. Let's say, for instance, as an example, Sane goes to her local 7-Eleven where these are actually available. Like, you could legitimately buy a whole Medarot set at your local convenience store. They're that commercial in universe. And she brings it home, puts it together, and sets it up. Now, granted, it's going to be like a toddler following you around, so it's going to be asking you constant questions, like for the next week, 2 weeks straight, just trying to gauge who you are, how you behave, how you respond, kind of learning about you and the world around you. Like, it'll point at a car and say, "What's that?" Or, "Why do you behave this way?" Or, "Why did you answer like you did?" Just really genuine questions like a toddler would. And then I like to believe that as they get to know you, and as they interact and kind of learn your daily routine and the world around them that they're interacting with, they develop a personality that's original to them, but also emulates fragments or pieces of their handler. So they would probably pick up a lot of traits that make Sane very well known, and that would be portrayed in how they talk or how they behave. And at some point, whenever they're out together talking, they'll be looking at him and says, "Oh, no, that's Sane's Medarot right there. It acts just like him." Or in some cases, you might even get a case of opposites attract, much like with Ikki and Metsubi, where they have two completely opposite personalities because of, say, nature or some other outside force or interaction or stimuli, to where you two are constantly arguing with each other because you have two completely different ideas and will never see common ground.
And you have to also remember, with that idea in mind, that Metabots metal was more of a legendary rare metal, so
Correct.
It could have been like really old, and
So-
he already had an established personality and all that.
Exactly. And like I said, a lot of that is mostly just me headcanoning it more than anything else, but it does seem to be most heavily alluded to. That's being talked about
I can see it
specifically.
happening.
Let me look at chat and see some of the questions there while you guys are thinking up more.
Yeah.
Which one's the shortest here?
The shortest.
I think it's
Shortest,
talking about us, and myself and you guys.
slowly raise his hand.
Oh, gee, I wonder.
Well, I think Toad probably speaks for himself over there with
I'm like
with as far as we're
2'7".
concerned.
Looks like it.
But honestly, I'm not one to discriminate like that, you know. So I'd say that's just more of a funny question. Who's my favorite? who is your favorite Medarot if you could have one as a partner? Ooh, that is a good question. Of course, I have my personal ones that I use that are customized versions in Medarot S. That's my team. But if I had to go with models that are officially canon, you know, like not fan made, not mix and match parts. Ooh, oh boy, that's a tough question. No. That's a tough question because there's just so many good ones.
Do you guys think you have any answers?
Yeah,
if
you guys have any, absolutely. Let's
Mine
hear
is
you guys.
Literalness, easily, any day of the week. I have a very well recorded weakness for cute pink-haired girls.
Ooh, good choice. Very good choice. Remind me after stream, and I'll show you her upgrade she got last year for Medarot Day. She got a new sister that actually emphasizes more of like old medieval style with like a plague doctor kind of motif.
Ooh.
I'll pull that up later once we get offline and show that to you. But no, that's always a very good pick. Gold, you said you had one. Which one would you pick?
I mean, I think it's also the same as my choices back in the Game Boy Advance, right? I didn't know that and this is pretty funny because I think I cleared the Meta B version, right? Whilst and beating the last boss while still having the original Meta B parts.
Oh yeah, that can definitely be a challenge since you lose parts if you lose.
The thing is, I did not know that because, you know, back then I wasn't a very wise teenager playing RPG games, right? So because none of the parts styles appeal to me, so I thought Meta B still looks cool regardless, right? So I kept on sticking with the original Meta B parts up to the point where I have to fight the final emperor thing. I forgot what's his name, right? And and obviously I kept on dying, but I beat the last boss, so so I think that's something.
Yeah, that's definitely a very solid choice. So you can never go wrong with the OGs. Sane, how about you?
It's not just. Oh, sorry.
You asking me for like a favorite Medarot in general?
Yep, favorite design.
I think I found the one because I was gonna say Pepper Cat because I just like Helmsham, it's like cute robot. However, I just noticed this exists. Blazer Mate.
Oh yes, an OG.
She's
from
like
Medarot
me for real.
Yep, Blazer Mate's been around for a pretty hot minute and a very popular choice among the community as a female favorite.
This is amazing. Honestly, I'm gonna put it here in the Discord chat so everybody knows who it is.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now.
Would you believe me if I said that she also had an upgraded form?
Incredible.
She has an upgraded form, which is basically a set of floating armor, but she can shed the armor and become a boxer. It's quite hilarious. Cool. It's quite hilarious.
That's amazing. Even more better. I want to see them walk with this with the hair.
We've been wanting to see Blazer Multi in S for a while.
See, if you had just showed me that without context, I would have been like, oh, they did a Hatsune Miku crossover.
Yeah, basically.
You know, that's something they should do.
I mean, she's collabed with basically
Miku should be on
else.
everything. Miku should be on everything. No, Miko's not on Fortnite though. We need Miko in Fortnite.
I saw this part of Blazerman, and I haven't seen any video media with her, but I do gotta ask, what do the twin tails stand for? Is it like missiles or?
So Blazer Mate is more or less Navi's equivalent to Sailor Multi, or Brass as she's known in the anime, as a support type. Blazer Mate's role is basically support healer. So she can restore damaged parts, she can heal damaged HP, and she can also supply a scan buff to everybody that's on the team.
I see.
So she's completely non-combative on her own until Blazer Multi comes around, where she keeps the same role until she sheds the armor, and then she can deal a pretty messy left hook. Let me see. Toad, how about you? Favorite model?
I do like all the classic ones, and the ones that are most nostalgic to me are like Medabots, Rakusho, Arcbeetle, stuff like that. But I'd say my favorite one design-wise that I haven't really seen too much of, I like Ugly Duck a lot.
Oh, definitely a classic, a very good OG.
That's one of the ones that I saw from the trading cards too, so it's like tiny nostalgic for me.
100%. And Vector, how about you?
Well, I am a big fan of, like I said, the old models. It's hard to compete with like classic Medabi, but I am a big fan of Peppercat, of War Bandit, and I'd probably like Arc Beetle a little more if he didn't have those weird little like legs that don't seem so sturdy. the little cylinders pointing out. If he had just a little sturdier legs, that'd probably be one of my favorites too.
Well, definitely a very solid choice for sure. Let me see, looking through here. My favorite, like I said, far too many picks. If I had to pick one that was that's officially canon, you know, no collabs or anything, just, you know, in universe as is. I would have to say one of my top favorites would be Kreutz Bison, who is one of the hybrid beetle types that was introduced in the same family as Cross Messiah. He was the hybrid model from last year that was introduced as a fusion between two older models. I'll go ahead and put that name here in chat so you guys can check him out later. There we go. But he was a model that was designed by Fujioka Kenki, who I did allude to as well a number of times. So already an out of the ballpark design with how creative it is, and just what he brings to the table with a very with basically a dual mastery ability while he's on the field. But his design also is absolutely out of the park.
Oh, that's so cool.
Let me see.
Yeah, get it right now.
I like that big like sword thing on his back.
Most difficult. Actually, something was brought to attention too with Kreutz Bison, which a lot of people were impressed with. In his base form, his right arm that is actually a very large cannon. It's a long range, basically railgun that he uses.
Oh,
and
now I see it.
And it's an allusion to a frame I think in the Medarot Navi manga, where the base model of Kuwagata Bison, one of the models that he's a fusion design of, was seen using a very large, similar-looking cannon as one of his arms. So people were freaking out when they saw that as part of his design, because they thought it was a perfect little, you know, nod. Let me see here. Most difficult game in the series. Honestly, that would kind of bank on how familiar you are with, you know, your RPG, tactical, third-person fighters, and if you're willing to stomach or fight the language barrier. Because if you understand the mechanics of the game, it's kind of easy to kind of conquer each relatively easily. If I had to pick one, though... I think. Honestly, and this is just my preference because I'm not super versed, or I'm not super good at them. I'd probably have to say Duel or GM, primarily because I'm not super adept at, you know, real-time action or action third-person fighter games. I can enjoy them pretty well, but they're not really my forte or my cup of tea. So if I were to say go head-to-head against somebody, they would probably crumple me pretty easily because I'm not really that competitive in the live. I hardly compete in the live PvP each week in Medarot S unless I have to, and even then it's against computer AI teams.
Yeah.
I almost never touch live PvP.
For Girls Mission, I actually have that one, and I think part of that game, I think it's a bit harder than it needs to be just by virtue of being on the 3DS. I feel like if it had a more robust controller, like a more free aiming or looking around,
More than likely,
would be a lot easier to play.
100%. Like, say if they put it on say the on the Wii U as an example, and they use like the screen on your console to, you know, as like a gyroscope kind of targeting, that probably would have been a little easier to work with it as well. But let me see what else here. Star Wars collab. Honestly, that would be amazing to see as well.
Star Wars collab.
Probably not gonna happen though.
Probably not, but you know, one can wish. I mean, people joked around for years of a Mega Man X collaboration, yet here we are getting X-Zero and Sigma.
Star Wars is Disney, so it's like Disney is so stubborn.
Yeah.
Being completely honest, I don't know if I'd want Disney to...
Definitely.
I'm not sure if I'd want to touch. I'm not sure if I'd want Disney to touch that series either. Being completely honest, not with their current reputation anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's
I
unfortunate.
don't think I'd want Star Wars fans anywhere near the Metabots community either.
Probably.
I mean, you're all asking questions, and I think the only question that I've been thinking about the entire time is like, Mecha fans, what are you doing? Oh, you've been slipping kind of on this.
Well, a lot of it's mostly because we've had to struggle with a language barrier with a lot of these, minus any fan translations. So unless you're versed in Japanese or you're willing to try to brute force the game, it kind of makes it hard to decide. Because with every game you play, say for instance if you start with Medarot 2 or or 2 core, and you kind of use that as your base, and you move up to Medarot 3, because you're like, okay, cool, it's the direct sequel, so it should be relatively similar. You are partially correct, but because they introduce a whole bunch of new models and probably like 50 or 60 brand new skills and attacks, now you have to sit there and understand, okay, what do these new skills do, who has it, and what does it behave like on the field, plus any other mechanics that they choose to introduce. So it's been a really big struggle for a while because we want to play the games, absolutely, but without the ability to understand Japanese or have any kind of ability to translate, it's been kind of a struggle. And even when I spoke with Laudel on his channel for the Navi retrospective, he mentioned that as well. That we want to understand the story, but, you know, language barrier.
I'm gonna say something once again that it's like, it's a middle ground of things that I may want to see and not see at the same time, because there's a side of this aesthetic and also this franchise in general that it's so brandable, it's so incredibly brandable, but it's still in like the niche feel. And if it becomes too popular, for example, let's say like next year 2025 is the year of Medarot, and you start having like hundreds of people on in your channel, and it becomes way normified, and then it's like, is that always a good thing, or is that a bad thing where it's gonna start being contaminated by the people who want to like change the aesthetic and the lore and everything behind it?
It's a double-edged sword.
That's with any fandom, honestly. It happened with Dragon Quest earlier this year, so
I 100% agree. It's a very valid point. Now, one thing I will say though, and they've been mentioning this for a while. I did allude to it in our group chat as well with what was incoming, but to any viewers that are currently watching or curious on what's in the loop. So for the last about, I'd say about 4 years now, Mr. Unohei on the official channel, usually with each year of Medarot Day, announces that they're working on some kind of project, but they won't necessarily say what it is or elaborate on what it could be. Last year's Medarot Day in 2023, actually let me take a step further back. In 2022's Medarot Day, they showcased a brand new banner that was basically a whole bunch of the models that were iconic to S, mostly just the main character bots and so on, kind of in a parade march. And they noticed at the very bottom in the very bottom right, just past Cross Messiah in the picture, is a picture of what looks like a heel, of the heel of somebody, a blue heel. And people were wondering for the longest time, what exactly is this? Was it a bug, or was it something that was left behind? They weren't sure. They didn't say anything. 2023 Medarot Day comes around, and they say, hey, we have more stuff here that's ongoing. Let me show you more of the picture. And they pull about a quarter of the screen over to showcase the back leg and the back hip guard of a brand new, never before seen model. And they have stated very clearly, this is not related to Medarot S. It is a completely brand new endeavor. We would like to have shown it sooner, but we couldn't due to outside circumstances. And I'm like to believe that was probably the lawsuit at the time. And they said, please stay tuned very soon because we'll have more information. That was last year. This year, starting about, I'd say about late October going into November, because November is usually hyped up for Medarot Day. Mr. Unohei makes comments saying that they're working on something, saying that regular Tuesday coverage on the official channel will be plain as normal, nothing special, but they will be hosting something very special and unique on Medarot Day itself, which is November 28th. At about, I think they said 5, I think the translated time is about 5 a.m. They're going to be revealing something. We don't know what it is. They've not hinted toward what it is or what it could be. All he stated very clearly is it will far exceed expectations. We hope you will tune in.
Oh my gosh.
We don't know what it is, but we know it's not related to Medarot S. It has at least one new face in it, and they're going to be showcasing something, keyword something, on the official channel on November 28th to celebrate Medarot Day.
I'm interested.
So we will have to see what that'll be in the next couple weeks as they allude to it or create any hints or anything else of the like. We will have to see. So it's obvious that they're still wanting to put something together for the series and keep it going.
Very
I do have
exciting.
another
That's how good
question.
it is. We get it as well.
Yes. But with that being said, I am going to go ahead and close... Actually, hold on. Which game is the worst by the Medarot fandom? If you've ever seen a title known as Shingata Medarot, that basically is... That basically would be one that people joke around as the worst possible ever because of its history. Long story short to that one, it didn't sell very well when they released it. It was an attempt to basically remake Medarot 1 on the new stronger Game Boy engine with a different art style. And how do I put this nicely? Its art style is unique. Not exactly palatable immediately, but it played exactly like Medarot 2 Core, so nothing different there. But its art style is just so unique. I'll just leave it there. To say it nearly killed the series is an understatement because it sold badly, and that's another reason why it had like a 7-year hiatus between 2003 and 2010. So it's commonly memed about that Beat and Servo, who are the icon stag beetle types, is we jokingly call them the cursed ones. And we joke around with that for that very reason, but some people enjoy it. Actually, Mr. Harmoren even said it's one of his favorites as far as, original storytelling and design as far. We kind of wonder why, but, we can't question him too heavily on that one. But that's just our general opinion on there. But we have covered a lot in this little presentation. We've covered what it is, what it comprises of, what they can do, where's it been, and where can I support the series. So I believe that basically brings us to the very end here of this massive collaboration and discussion here. So I'm going to take a minute here and also highlight my special guest at the moment here with Sane, Gold, Vector, Toad, and Helmchan. Guys,
Grand time we've had.
It was an absolute treat being able to have you guys with me tonight. It's always a treat having you guys with me at any given time for whatever collaboration it is. Or if we decide to collaborate and do something later in the future, I love having you guys. You've been wonderful guests, and it's been an absolutely wonderful and very informative discussion here, keeping things going with all you guys' feedback and your thoughts and your just your overall stories as what got you involved in the series, or even how intimately you were involved with it before before it kind of fell off, or before you kind of picked it up again, inside or outside of my influence. But
most definitely,
I do want to take
thanks again for having us.
Absolutely. So
it was an awesome time.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
it's
I
an
will.
amazing
People I kind of like vibing with.
Yep, I would like to also take a minute for any viewers as well from our mixed pool here of viewers to highlight that you guys give each and every one of them a follow, either on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, or Blue Sky, whichever platform you're on. Definitely give them a follow. Tell them that Kura sent you their way. Wonderful group of individuals here of varying levels, degrees of life, different vibes, different games, and such they do on their channels. You will not be sorry seeing your stuff in their feeds. They are a wonderful group of individuals. And every last one of you guys, once again, thank you so much for being part of this wonderful, of this moment, of this presentation. It's been an absolute treat having you guys. And I hope that we can coordinate
That's a super honor, Kura.
or even, or even like a, combination of us coordinate something in the future again. DMs are always open, or if you guys would like to try to make the jump into Medarot S or even something else, there's always a seat here at the MNN for you guys.
And a big thanks to chat for learning with us tonight. Don't you guys feel wizened,
That's true.
enlightened?
Feel
Don't you
wizened.
feel?
Gosh, I learned
it was
so
worth
much
it?
more.
I've
I
been
know
enlightened.
My shroom brain is filling out my shroom head.
The real
Honest,
Metaphorce was all the knowledge we learned tonight.
I was-
our armor's melting.
I was so worried with setting this together that I'd flub up something somewhere or overlook something or not pay attention to it or or dominate the discussion, but you guys all did fantastic with keeping the discussion going and with your own feedbacks and everything like that. It's been truly enlightening seeing all these different approaches and understandings of things and questions, things that even I probably wouldn't have considered with me analyzing this thing down to the very last molecule. But no, it's been a great time. I loved having you guys, and it honestly was great. I'm hoping that this will be a big way to hype up Medarot Day coming up here in the next couple weeks as we see what this mysterious announcement will be on the official channel, or even if you guys decide to start doing something on your own around the series that you guys could see something on there, or we could try coordinate like a commentary or whatever on there. I would love to try to do something at some point.
Honestly, I am already thinking about streaming Medarot 3 translation now. After all that, that sounds like a really fun idea.
I'll get you guys some links as well once we officially do go offline and pass along some stuff. But once again, as I'm gonna go ahead and carry on here, I'm gonna phase out.
I gotta say this before you leave. I'm never gonna forgive you for introducing me to the little aliens that they are actually. So I will never unsee them as like a little UFO now. I can see their round head and the shape of the body.
There's no going back.
If I close my eyes.
The alien concept is literally a trip and a half.
Oh man, like it's
I'm never gonna see the franchise the same way again.
It's true. Same here.
Like I said, like it's crazy how a lot of this stuff was never ever known to the Western community because we've never seen it translated before. So like I said, when I said, and I was telling some coworkers I was working on with this, I said to say about 85% of the content I've been putting together and digging information for is completely new is probably still an understatement, because it's all stuff that again has never been translated before. So I hope that with this, even with the long runtime, that it's something that anyone can point to and say this is a complete breakdown that explains the entirety of the series, what it is, where it comes from, and just how how in depth its series go, and just what makes it so amazing. And I'm honored to be able to have shared that with you guys here in this minute, being able to put it all together.
We got a real scoop.
Exactly.
Honored to be a part of it.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and close everything out and wish everyone well, guys. Thank you so much for being with me again. If you could do me a favor when I do go offline, stick around for just a little bit longer. But when I do go off, to share a couple words and pass along a couple things before we all go our separate ways.
Absolutely.
So
sounds like that's it for us, chat. We'll see you when we see you.
Yes, one last time. I'm gonna go ahead and mute everything here so I can close off. Let me see as I say farewell to everybody. There it is. All right. So, with that being said, thank you so much for all the time that you have spent with me here today, with being able to learn just a little bit something new about everyone's favorite small fighting machines. Now, I'm very excited for what anything else could be announced with this mysterious announcement on Thursday, Medarot Day, like I said. So do make sure you stay tuned with me on that one. Follow my dear friends as well for even more content, Medarot or not. And with that being said, as always, I do appreciate Wolf for stopping in, just as you always do. And until next time, this is your host, Kura Isagami of the Medarot News Network, signing out.